Good evening, everyone. I would now like to call the September 9th, 2025 Longmont City Council regular session to order. The live stream of this meeting can be viewed at the city's YouTube channel, also at longmontpublicmedia.org/watch or on Comcast channels 8 and 880. May we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Peck.
Here.
Councilmember Christ.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo Faring.
Here.
Councilmember McCoy. Councilmember Popkin.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Yarbrough.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with the council's rules of procedure, the rules for providing public comment are as follows. Only Longmont residents and employees of the city of Longmont may speak during first call public invited to be heard. And also tonight on first call public invited to be heard, anyone who is here to speak on public hearing item, the sit and lie ordinance, you can sign up on first call public invited to be heard because we've already had the public hearing a week ago or 2 weeks ago on that item. You must provide your address and sign up on the sign-up sheet before the meeting, and you must state your name, and you have 3 minutes. And anyone may speak on second reading or public hearing item, except for this one issue, and you're asked to add your name to the speaker list for that specific item before the meeting. Unfortunately, we only have one tonight, which is the one I just said we're not going to have a public hearing item on. So, there you go. We are now at the approval of the August 26th meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve those?
Second.
They've been moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Christ. Are there any comments or questions about the meeting minutes? Seeing none, let's vote. Is everybody able to vote? Oh, great. There it is. That passes unanimously. Do we have any agenda revisions and submissions of documents, Don?
I have no revisions, Mayor.
Thank you. Any motions from councilors to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas? Councilor Popkin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I don't have a motion for the city manager, but I actually had a question. And this comes from, I've been trying to make sense of the public comments that we've had for, at least since I was appointed in January, but it seems like they kind of ebb and flow depending on the month and depending on what's going on. Since the public hearing, the public forum back in July, there were a lot of comments on the advanced meter infrastructure or smart meters. And so I guess what I'm trying to understand is we've been hearing from very concerned residents about those installed smart meters. Can you help me understand more the scope of this issue? And is this a citywide issue? Is it neighborhood specific?
So not a citywide issue. I think when we look at the scope of this, I want to say, and David can help me, we had a number of people choose the opt-out provision in this. And I would say that's probably in the hundreds. And David, if I missed that number, come up and tell me what that number is.
He's coming up.
But on the other side of it, in terms of the remaining group, it's below 10.
There are fewer than 10.
Correct. And of the group that is remaining, 2 of those locations, the meter is actually not on the house.
So there are fewer than, just to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, there are fewer than 10 residents across the entire city that haven't opted out and wants a different solution?
Correct.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, City Council, David Hornbacher, Assistant City Manager, Utilities Public Works. So, yes, as Harold said, we've got over 46,000 meters, in our community. Of those, 340 folks chose to do the opt-out option, which is something we talked to council, and that was provided as an option for them.
Right.
Then there's a remaining 8 that have not selected either way, and like Harold said, two of them, the meter is not even on the house. It's either out in a metering pedestal right adjacent to the sidewalk, like you see in some of the neighborhoods in town. It's been that way for many decades.
Yeah.
Another one is actually in a corner of a yard, again, away from the house, where it's a group of meters that are being there, of which 3 of those 4 meters are actually, standard AMI meters.
Got it. And so it sounds like is it true that other than the opt-out option, like the city isn't doing much here? Like what is the city doing to address the concerns that have been raised?
Yeah, so understanding the scope and seeing that 2 of the meters were not on the home, we said, okay, what are our options to look at? So I asked David to look and create other options where you can locate the meter where it, again, is not on the home at an off-site location. And obviously, the cost of that location will be borne by the individuals that are requesting it.
Gotcha. And then one of the solutions that has been asked about before is the concept of an analog meter. I presume that's what we had for a while here, and we know that those work. Like, is that an option for folks?
So they are no longer producing the analog meters. You can still find those meters, but they're not new meters. They're refurbished meters. And so when you look at it, that's the other challenge as well, because there's you never know the quality of a refurbished meter.
And just to add to that, the opt-out meter is devoid of any communication device. It's not something that's in there and turned off. It is just not part of the meter manufacturer.
Okay. So that's really not an option then from a utility system management standpoint?
What is not an option?
The analog meter? I mean, like the city can't go out and buy these?
I would be hesitant in getting a refurbished meter because, one of the things you get is you get the protection of the manufacturer's warranty, and that you lose in that process.
From like a malfunctioning meter or fire or electrical problem?
That would be my concern.
Okay. And then the last question I had for you is, what's the it sounds like the residents that have come and spoken to us sound exasperated and frustrated and really just devastated by what's been happening to them. And so what is the process that they had or have to address a concern if they disagree?
Extensive processes going through appeals at different levels. The last appeal was one that actually under ordinance goes to me or my appointee. Based on the conversations that council had been hearing, I chose to appoint a hearing officer, which is not a member of this organization, to really
Meaning not a member of the city?
Not a
city
member
staff,
of city
like
staff, no.
independent in
It
that
is
sense.
it is an independent hearing officer. It's not unlike what we do as part of our personnel process, where that actually comes before me. So they're not a city employee. And the reason why we wanted to do that is to ensure that it wasn't someone internal making that decision. And that's not an uncommon approach when we reach that level and getting that independent hearing officer to hear the case.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you for clarifying all that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to add agenda items? Seeing no one, I'm going to move on and ask our city manager if you have a report.
No report, Mayor, Council.
Thank you. We are now at first call, public invited to be heard. And the first person on our list is Paul Hollingshead.
Good evening. I'm Paul Hollingshead, 3800 Pike Road here in town. I'm one of the creative community that Longmont Public Media has nurtured. The facility and staff at LPM give the people you represent a chance to express themselves through video, audio, music, and podcasts. It is LPM volunteers that film the town's parades, street festivals, farmers market, and fair activities. It will be members of that community that will pull Sundance Film Festival activities to our town. LPM has provided real-world experience for aspiring students from the SVVSD Innovation Center. Discarding that functionality is a bad move, in my opinion. My way of giving back took place last night. I led an audio editing class for a small group of Longmont creators. I wrote the course material knowing that it could be useful not just on one occasion, but in multiple sessions as others want to learn media tools. Besides being useful for them, it was a creative outlet for me. That is only one chunk of instructional material that LPM makes available to interested citizens. I see benefit in actively helping Longmonters communicate and express themselves. After 35 years of being cloistered with engineers, it has been broadening for me to get acquainted with a diverse sample of my neighbors at LPM. I have learned things about others and about myself. I would like to see the additional things that Longmont Public Media does be continued as a way of making our community richer. Thank you.
The next person is T.G. Lewis.
Good evening, City Council. Nice to see you. I'm not going to be quite as eloquent as my friend Paul over here, but I did want to chime in and basically say thank you for what you've been doing the last few years with LPM's existence. I remember back some years ago, I used to do the men's all-state choir concerts down in Denver at the Belco and the Buell Theater. And the company that I took over from, when they would edit the DVD for release, they had only the musical performances. And so I took a slightly different tack because the conductors of each choir, they would spend a few minutes talking about the crucial nature and the value of arts in school, and the way that we don't seem to value it maybe as much as we should at that level. And then I thought, LPM, it's just kind of the next stop on the way for creative people. And it truly is a wonderful group of people. And we're all there to just try to help anybody who comes in and wants to create something, be it a podcast, be it a video, be it music. And it's a good group of people. And thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you, T.G. Jen Jepson.
Hello, thank you. I'm Jen Jepson, the Director of Recovery Cafe Longmont at 402 Kimbark Street. I attended the meeting convened at the Longmont Chamber of Commerce on Thursday, September 4th, about the city's proposed ordinance 102430. I was surprised by the lack of foresight in how to navigate the unhoused folks in our community who are not staying at Hope or All Roads. The solution presented to the room, filled with nonprofit leaders, business owners, and city employees, was to have a team from Hope and Lead to wake people up early in the morning and move them on to one of 4 different locations: Hope, Recovery Cafe Longmont, the Hub, or the library. As the director of one of these 4 locations, I was surprised Recovery Cafe Longmont was on the list. Our mission is to be a community of refuge and healing for individuals in recovery. We recognize how substance and alcohol use, along with trauma and mental health challenges, contribute to the struggle of homelessness. And to be listed as one of these 4 potential solutions, while welcome, feels quite short-sighted. We, of course, would love to host anyone who may benefit from our services. However, our model of operation is for individuals who choose their recovery. We are not a day shelter, and many will choose not to come to Recovery Cafe, nor should they have to. And
If they all choose to meet our membership requirements at the cafe, we would run out of resources, financial, personnel, and frankly, we currently do not have the space. The thing that struck me the most at this citywide meeting was the lack of proposed innovative solutions. We need more. These folks, they are our folks. Many are members of this community. They deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and this ordinance flies in the face of what I have known Longmont to be. While Recovery Cafe Longmont is part of the solution, we cannot solve this problem, nor can the proposed actions solve this problem. We can all do our part, but in my opinion, until we center the needs and, dare I say, desires of our unhoused population, we will continue to struggle as a community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jen. Ryan Forbes.
Ryan Forbes, 2220 Water Song Circle. I'm on the board of a recovery cafe. I also work on Main Street, and I was also at that same meeting that Jen was at. And I feel the same way, that they're basically that's not the way we're going to solve the problem. And also, one of the main things that came up throughout the meeting was that we're going to figuring out, we're throwing all our resources at the city is going to throw all of its resources at this problem because it is a big problem. It's hard on businesses, and it's also, we want to do it in a compassionate way, so that we're not hurting citizens within the city. However, I feel strongly that there's a lot more prevention that can be done going into it. One of the biggest issues is just that between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., there's not even a bathroom for someone who's unhoused to use, let alone a bed to sleep in. So that leads to all sorts of other complications that they have to deal with and navigate while they're out. And then and then the other big part about it is, as much as it would be nice if there was, there was no drug use, everyone was following the law perfectly, that doesn't happen anywhere. So having safe use spaces so that we can, when people do choose to use substances, they're monitored, no one dies. And also, if someone decides that they're going to pick up a rock and start throwing them through the glass of local businesses, that's when authorities can be contacted before something goes wrong and before businesses suffer, rather than after it's already happened and after there's already costs. The other thing I'd like to say with my short remaining time is that I love everyone coming out tonight and talking about public media. I love it. And I think a big reason that's happening is because there's pressure on Longmont public media. And I said it last year, and I'll say it again. It seems like when there's pressure on Longmont public media, that gets people talking about it and that gets people out and doing more. I would love to see Longmont public media doing more without the pressure and just doing it because they want to just keep on expanding. These amazing people you're seeing tonight come out and talk. And I would love to see that more. But thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you, Ryan. Alice Swellentenfuss. Seltenfuss. How many years am I going to try to figure that one out?
Mayor Peck and Longmont City Council. My name is Alice Seltenfuss. I live at 1913 Tyler Avenue, Longmont. I'm the Executive Director of HOPE, Homeless Outreach Providing Encouragement, and I'm here to respond to Ordinance 1024-130. For the past 2 weeks, Public Safety, their lead team, and HOPE developed a combined intervention plan. I want to thank Police Chief Zach Artis, Emily Van Dorn, and the lead team. David Kennedy and Sarah Arney, and all the other public safety staff that participated in this effort to respond to businesses and to assist individuals causing possible issues. I appreciate that Alberto Mendoza and Christina Pacheco with the city also attended some of the work sessions. And I thank our licensed social worker, Ellie Lunkenheimer, right there, for doing all the work towards this. The combined interventions plans look good, and I hope we use it. Before our collaboration, Hope staff believed that educating unhoused folks about the parks rules was the answer to moving them from the businesses back to the parks. While collaborating, these things were made clear to all of us, public safety and Hope. Number one, referring unhoused folks back to parks instead of the walkways would undo all the work public safety has done to help the parks be safer and inviting to everyone, including the neighbors that live in that area. Number two, there is no place in Longmont, no sanctioned place in Longmont for unhoused people to go during the day. Having to move along means they are going somewhere else that also might not be allowed. Number three, the ordinance will disproportionately affect unhoused people the most. The majority of unhoused people on our streets are from Longmont. They call Longmont their home. Therefore, Hope will put efforts towards these interventions and many, many more. Number one, not taking care of their tickets will cause issues for everyone. The business meeting September 4th, held at Longmont Chamber offices, which we were supposed to be fearful of, was exceptionally positive, and we appreciate the business leaders that came. Number three, about 4 to 5 years ago, diversion warnings were given out instead of tickets for minor offenses to meet the next day at the lead office. Diversion works, in my opinion. Restorative justice works, and it is something offered at Bright Collaborative at 528 Main Street. Monday, yesterday, all my staff worked at visiting North Main Street businesses, and we will continue to hand out helpful information. Thank you, City Council. It's up to you.
Thank you, Alice. Strider Benston.
I don't move as good as I used to. In your 9th decade, that happens. Strider Benston, 951 17th. A couple of things. One, when the government kills people without a trial, that used to be called lynching. Now it's called drug interdiction in the Caribbean. Used to be insurrection against the United States government used to be a crime. Now it becomes the ICE. The main leaders of the insurrection were the Proud Boys, who used to be the Ku Klux Klan, but they lost in court and had to dissolve, and so they became the Proud Boys. And I just learned a couple of days ago they are being trained to kill Palestinians in Palestine, and then they're learning to function as a unit. Secretly, of course, they all wear masks. Funny, a couple of the countries in the world that police don't wear masks is China and Iran, of all strange things. We used to, I spent my whole life around creating a democracy, the third time in this country to try, and we won the Voting Rights Act in 1965. Now, John Roberts, who became head of the Supreme Court, is basically spent his whole life to destroy that. They've already wiped out Section 2, Section 4, and Section 5, and they're going to try in October the 15th to destroy the rest of it. So exterminate the right to vote, and what do we have left in this country? William Howard Taft basically created, it didn't create, but he made the shadow docket the primary thing of the Supreme Court, what they're doing now. They bring a case, no argument, no evidence, no discussion, and the public does not know what the heck they're doing, and then that can become law on a temporary manner. Temporary lasts forever. That is what we're dealing with right now, and if we're going to keep a country, we have to stand up and fight for it, and I do mean that. I don't mean military, I mean take on all of the issues, and let's keep this country alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Strider. Nia Wozniak.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Nia Wasink. I'm at 1471 Alpine Street. First off, I want to thank many of you who reached out, who called to chat about your agenda item 10B tonight with me, sit and lie ordinance. Tonight, I'm appearing as a private citizen who cares about this issue, who cares about the unhoused in our community, who cares about how we show up as a city. As city council members, I think one of your most important things while you're thinking about ordinances, policy, legislation, is this going to be effective? Is this actually going to meet the goals that we're setting out to achieve? In looking at pretty significant evidence and reading transcripts from past meetings, seems like the thing we're trying to solve for here are business calls to 911, them asking for our local public safety to move people along. In looking at national research, sit and lie ordinances do not successfully do that. Businesses 1 to 2 years following the implementation of a sit and lie ordinance continue to say that it is an issue and they have not seen improvement. So if that is what we're trying to solve for, this ordinance is not going to elicit those results. I also think we need to look at what are the unintended consequences of something like this, whether it's the vulnerable populations that are going to continue to be impacted negatively, or the budget implications. As we know, our city has really significant budget constraints right now. This same study looked at what it meant for cities to implement sit and lie ordinances, and they saw significant financial increases required to man the calls for service. So as we are looking at our budget in the next year, I'm curious to how are we going to manage this? How are we going to invest additional dollars into public safety to actually enforce this ordinance? As my friend Jen mentioned, it also means an added burden on our area nonprofits. And I don't think it can be overstated that they are under significant pressure right now. Their resources are being cut left and right, whether it's state, federal grants, private philanthropy, and a massive increase in needs. So our sector is already consolidating. You've heard about programs getting cut from partners like the Hour Center and All Roads. That will continue to happen. So the city adding additional burdens to these nonprofits could be part of the continued collapse. I also just want to highlight the moment we're in right now. We're in a moment where LGBTQ plus folks are under fire, where our neighboring city is pulling pride flags. We're in a moment when we have people scared to leave their homes because of ICE detention. As a city, I don't think we need to further criminalize our unhoused populations. This is a time for us to come together as a community. This is a time for us to look at really innovative solutions, and I think we have the business leaders, the nonprofits, and the city employees who want that. So I'm going to ask you to please vote down this ordinance so we can put resources to finding solutions that actually work. Thank you.
Thank you, Nia. Lance Whitaker.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Lance Whitaker, as you all know. I live at 1750 Collier Street in Longmont, Colorado. Been a resident of Longmont for over 40 years. And I am here to tell you today is National Wiener Schnitzel Day. It is also National Ants on a Log Day, which is celery, peanut butter, and raisins for some odd reason. And it's also National Teddy Bear Day. So all the Care Bears would like to also remind you that it is Share Your Care Day. So share your care, I guess. I'd also like to see fruit trees in parks, as you all know. And have a good day, and thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Steve Altshuler. Oh, Steve, this is not a political forum.
I'm not speaking politically.
I know, but you're wearing this shirt, and
It's the First Amendment. I can wear this. I've seen people here with Hamas
is that
flags.
right, Eugene?
Mayor and council, it's public invited to be heard. They can
Wear whatever they want. Okay, thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Steve Altshuler, 1555 Taylor Drive. I guess I don't get to talk to the whole council.
He's just gonna go get a drink. Let's be polite, please.
Oh, I am. So I wanted to tell you that I probably just saved the city between $50,000 and $100,000. About 3 years ago, there was a survey done that the city paid for, and I would guess, you know, if you mail out a 3-page survey, it's probably $1 a page, and there's 20,000 homes in Longmont, and with postage and everything, it could easily be $100,000. The majority of people responded that they did not like the traffic that was going on in Longmont. I've talked about this before. And in the last 3 years, all that's gone up is more and more high-density housing. So given that, I want to tell you that when I had to get my 75 signatures, and I won't go into details, when I had to get the signatures for the ballot, I would say to people, you know, would you mind signing? And they'd say, well, what do you stand for? And I said, well, I'm against all the construction the city is doing. And did you know that now they're looking at changing the height requirements to do away with the 4-story and allowing 7 or 10 or 14-story buildings? That's all I had to say. And people were signing up right away saying, where do I sign? Where do I sign? Where do I sign? People in Longmont do not want the density that's being built. They don't want high-rise buildings, whether it's on the south side of Longmont or on Main Street. You know, and so I'm saving you all that money. You don't have to run another survey. If you've talked to people at Farmers Market, if you ask them those questions, they will tell you nobody wants the density that's being built. It's just going to create more and more traffic. And even if you build out at the sugar mill, that's not going to move traffic. It's going to create more traffic out there. The only way to really reduce any traffic is to get more jobs in Longmont so people can drive 2 miles to work instead of 20 miles. That'll get them off of Ken Pratt, it'll get them off of Maine, and that will help Longmont be a lot more successful financially, and then more people have work closer to home. And as far as this shirt, I'm wearing it because on Saturday at Rhythm on the River, Sean was nice enough to come over to me and say that he really liked the shirt. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, seeing no one else on the list, I'm going to close first call, public invited to be heard. But I do want to say I see a lot of scouts sitting in our audience, and I thought perhaps there would be a name on the list that someone wanted to come up and talk about why they're all on the list. So I guess I don't know what we're waiting for since you're not on the agenda. I would like to hear.
So my name is Jared Hansberry. I am Scoutmaster of the Boys Troop 67 out of the American Legion. We also have some members of our Girls Troop as well. And we are actually here doing a merit badge. This is Josh, who is our Assistant Senior Patrol Leader. You want to explain to him what merit badge you're working on?
So we're working on the Citizenship in the Community merit badge. And that really talks about like what you can do in your community, how you can benefit it, and how you can affect it, and what it really means to be a citizen in your community. And it's an Eagle required merit badge, so you have to get the Eagle Scout rank. And one of the requirements is to come to a city council meeting. So We're based out in Longmont at the American Legion Post 32, and we just thought we'd come out today and take some notes, I guess.
Oh, so you're working on a badge. Fantastic. Well, welcome. Let us know what we can do better. A lot of other people are. You might as well tell us.
Well, we've been very active helping with fair parades, and we try to be in all the parades. And I've personally been in Longmont since I was young. Let's just put it this way: when I moved here, they were complaining that they built the mall out by the fairgrounds where nobody ever goes. So I've been here a while. My parents are. My dad has been here since the 50s. We're family has 6 graduates from Longmont High School, and so we've been here for a while. I've been with Troop 67 for a little over 30 years now, since I was 14, and so we like just digging in and helping out with the community, anything we can do with that. And this is about the 3rd or 4th time over the years I've brought a group here, so thank you for having us, and appreciate letting us speak.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Our consent agenda. Would you mind reading the consent agenda into the record, please, Don?
Absolutely, Mayor Peck. The second reading and public hearing for all ordinances introduced on this consent agenda will be held on September 23rd, 2025. Item 9A is ordinance 2025-52, a bill for an ordinance organizing the Harvest Moon Business Improvement District, providing for an election of the Board of Directors of the district, and approving the 2025 to 2026 operating plan and budget for the district. 9B is Resolution 2025-51, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the amended and restated organic contract establishing Platte River Power Authority as a separate governmental entity with the town of Estes Park, City of Fort Collins, City of Longmont, and City of Loveland, Colorado. 9C is Resolution 2025-52, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the amended contract for the supply of electric power and energy between the City of Longmont and Platte River Power Authority. 9D is approve 7 capital improvement program amendments, and 9E is accept 8 capital improvement program amendments approved by the city manager.
Thank you. Are there any questions about Councilor Popkin?
I don't have a question about myself personally, but I did want to remove item E from the consent agenda.
Okay. Are there any other councilors that want to remove items? Seeing none, I'm going to move the consent agenda minus item E. Okay, it's been moved by myself, seconded by Councilor McCoy. Let's vote. Whoops. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. We are now at ordinances on the second reading and public hearing on any matter. The first one is a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for expenses and liabilities of the City of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2025. And this bill number is 2025-51. Are there any comments or questions from councilors? Seeing none, I'll open up the public. Whoops. That was fast. I'll open up the public hearing on 2025-51. Is there anyone in the public that would like to address this bill? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing on 2025-51 and ask for a vote. I mean a motion, and then a vote. Do I have a second? I'll second. All right, it's been moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo Faring. Oh, man. Let's vote. And that passes unanimously. The second one is a bill for an ordinance amending Title 10 of the Longmont Municipal Code by adding Section 1024-130 concerning sitting or lying down in commercial districts. Are there any comments from councilors? Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo Faring.
Actually, I have a question. Are we going to have a presentation on this? Okay, so then would we have time after the presentation to ask questions then?
Oh, great.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll invite Zach Artis, our Public Safety Chief, to address us.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, Zach Artis, Public Safety Chief for the City of Longmont. I'm joined this evening by Emily Van Dorn. She's our Program Manager for our lead and core teams. As Council may recall, Public Safety previously presented an ordinance concerning right-of-way access, which established restrictions on sitting, kneeling, reclining, or lying down within designated geographical areas within the City of Longmont. All right, it is working. As council is aware, public right-of-ways in Longmont are either owned by the City of Longmont or owned by CDOT, Colorado Department of Transportation. And adjacent property owners are required to maintain these areas in clean and safe conditions. However, they have no authority to regulate conduct or remove individuals from these areas. That responsibility rests within the city or solely on the city. The slide shown here are Longmont Code requirements of the right-of-ways and restriction the city has placed on these parcels of land. The city's strict control over the right-of-ways is intended for several things. One is to protect public safety. An example of this would be preventing the obstruction of views or vision by signage that may be placed in the right-of-way. So as people exit a parking lot into a roadway, their vision would not be obstructed. To protect city's accessibility, which ensures utilities and infrastructure remain available and accessible, and protect community appearance by preserving landscaping and design standards established by code. The frustration that has arisen is because the adjacent property owners are responsible for maintaining the right-of-ways, but are not permitted to use it themselves without permission from the city, while private citizens can use these areas for a variety and various reasons. Typically, when law enforcement is called, officers generally have little to no recourse beyond asking an individual to move along, and leaves the adjacent property owner frustrated at times when law enforcement is not able to take action. While most individuals we engage respond and are in compliance and do move along, there are exceptions to that. Recently, CDOT informed the Longmont Police Department that its willingness to sign an affidavit and provide free signage for all of CDOT-owned right-of-ways in the city. This would include such areas as Highway 66, Highway 287, and Highway 119, some of the same roadways and areas that are being proposed in this ordinance. CDOT does have a plan in place to put signage, the no trespassing signage, in their right-of-ways on Highway 287 and Highway 66, both north and south, east and west, just outside the city limits. There is no date at this time of when that's going to come, but there is a plan in place by CDOT to put that signage on the outskirts city limits of Longmont, out into the county. CDOT's affidavit is much broader than the city's proposed ordinance. Under CDOT's rule, no one could be allowed in the right-of-way. Violators could be served what's considered a criminal trespass notice or notifying them they can't come back on the CDOT property. And then cited or charged without any additional warning if they were located back on CDOT's property in the future. By contrast, the city ordinance applies only to limited areas and only to specific geographical areas, and restricts individuals from sitting, lying, kneeling, reclining in those areas. And officers must first ask the individual to move, and as long as they comply, no enforcement action is ever taken. In short, CDOT's affidavit creates a blanket ban on all activities, while the city ordinance takes a much more narrowed, measured approach focused on making citizens' use of right-of-ways in line with our expectations on our business owners. The designated areas on this ordinances that are listed here were selected based on the calls for service the public safety was getting and the concerns that our business owners brought to our attention. And during our June 17th presentation, our partners at Hope expressed concerns that the adoption of the ordinance could unintentionally create negative impact on our unhoused community. And at council's direction, staff went and met with Hope to further discuss these concerns. And over the past few months, we have engaged both with Hope and our business community to clarify the intent of the ordinance and explore potential impacts should council choose to move forward. And as Alice has stated earlier, her and her staff have done an amazing job in communicating with us to try to find alternatives in how we can engage our unhoused community. But unfortunately, we were unable to reach an agreement to which Hope could support the proposed ordinance. However, those conversations led to a greater and stronger shared commitment to collective engagement with our unhoused community. And tonight, Ms. Van Dorn will be sharing what this new collaborative partnership by Public Safety and Hope looks like as we engage our unhoused community.
Thanks, Zach. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. So the ordinance, as Zach had said, the ordinance originally discussed on June 17th has raised concerns about unintended impacts. One of the most important parts of this work is listening and adapting to the community we serve. We use this feedback as a starting point for deeper collaboration, and I'm going to share a timeline illustrating how each step built toward a more balanced model, pairing accountability with compassion through outreach, case management, and collaboration. The timeline is a bit lengthy, so bear with me. So on Wednesday, June 18th, Public Safety connected with Hope and requested feedback, ideas, and proposed solutions by July 3rd. On Wednesday, July 2nd, leadership teams from both Hope and Public Safety met to review the ordinance, share perspective, and identify potential areas of collaboration.
Excuse me, could you just move that microphone closer to your mouth?
Yes, I'm sorry. There we go.
All right.
Now I can hear my own voice. Okay. From July 2nd to July 28th, Public Safety and Hope staff collaborated to explore possible engagement opportunities and approaches. On Monday, July 28th, Hope and Public Safety work groups and leadership met to hear the initial proposal. And while progress was made, the group was asked to continue refining their recommendations and work toward an agreed upon solution. At that meeting, our conversation shifted from a what instead of the ordinance more to a what alongside the ordinance conversation, simply because it was clear we were not going to be able to build a 24/7, 365 plan or even a limited hours, 7-day-a-week plan. So understanding our limitations, our partners in law enforcement, businesses, and the community at large needed a reasonable amount of structure to address problem behavior while balancing compassion and a service-first approach. From July 28th to August 18th, Public Safety and Hope staff continued to work together, focusing on practical strategies. We did a test where we paired a Hope outreach worker, a public safety peer case manager, and a law enforcement partner in a non-enforcement capacity to work together to respond to calls for service and engage individuals in areas adjacent to right-of-ways. Although this limited data set due to staffing constraints didn't give us all of the answers, it did serve its purpose, and it provided some information and guided the work groups to be able to figure out where a good starting point might be. On Monday, August 18th, we reconvened to develop a concrete proposal guided by information that we learned from the test. Ideas were challenged based on resourcing and philosophy, and we left that meeting agreeing we would come back together the following week with an outcome of the upcoming meeting, that concrete plan. We needed to move forward, and we wanted to incorporate that feedback, insight, and the concern for capacity. So on Thursday, August 28th, Hope and Public Safety work groups met, and we left the meeting with a plan. We developed a starting point for shifted operations centered around reducing harmful encounters, connecting people with resources, and allowing our law enforcement to focus on safety priorities. We'll share more about where we go from here and those shifted operations in our final slide. So then finally, on September 4th, as you've heard from other leaders and community members, 2 of our team members, along with Public Safety and Hope leadership, presented our proposal to businesses and nonprofit partners to initiate that further collaboration and feedback. And the presentation was well received. It's true. Our business owners and businesses are highly engaged and want to be a part of the solution. I feel confident saying that both Hope and Public Safety agree our collaboration is a good starting point, and the response plan, similar to our LEAD program, is built to be agile, responding to community needs through data-guided decisions and shared responsibility across sectors. We understand that across sectors there are differing opinions about the ordinance itself, but we're aligned on expanding outreach and a service-first response. Our plan aims to balance accountability with compassion and continue engaging cross-sector dialogue so no work group is trying to solve this problem or address it alone.
Thank you, Emily. We wanted to highlight just some efforts in the last 6 months, both by law enforcement, LDPS, which is our case managers for LEAD, and then also the work that Hope is doing in our community to reach out. And I'm going to touch briefly on the law enforcement side and then turn it over for Emily for some more conversation as far as the case management work that's being done. But this is a snapshot in time of January 2025 to July of 2025. Law enforcement, we only pulled the data just for North Main, since that was the area that we seem to have most of our challenges in and calls for service. As you can see, we had 450 calls for service on unhoused individuals. But what I would note is that about 366 of those calls did not require any type of enforcement action. Only 84 of those led to either a citation or an arrest. And so just wanted to highlight the amount of work that public safety is doing with calls of service and issues within the North Main area to address that, but also our collaboration as we work with both LDPS and Hope. And I'll turn that over to Emily for some more details.
So we know case management and Hope are proactively providing intervention and connection to resources based on the information in this slide and other outcomes. In 6 months, these work groups have collectively interacted with unhoused community members 3,618 times. In Q1 and Q2 of 2025, work groups across sectors, to include public safety case management, Hope, Annie and Millie's Place, Boulder County Public Health Works Program, Hope Light Medical Clinic, and Recovery Cafe, have had 98 collaborative outreach events with 61 community-based medical interventions and 10 pop-up clinics at the Hope shelters. What's clear to me in this data is even with the stellar work across these 3 teams and our other valued partners, there's room for improvement in how systems work together to address community issues. That's okay. So as stated many times, we all agree operational changes to expand partnership are a good thing. The operational changes I'll outline here are a starting point to build a broader positive impact. Just as we've worked alongside other ordinances, such as the standard of behavior, shopping carts, and the camping ban, I can speak for public safety case management that we believe we're able to work alongside this ordinance. What you'll hear is a new, more intentional effort in our outreach to address the needs of our unhoused community members. So 5 days a week, public safety case management staff will adjust their starting hours to engage unhoused individuals along right-of-way and adjacent property. The effort will be to intentionally start the day welcoming and talking to individuals about the day's plan, address immediate needs, and provide a link to services where appropriate. This start time and intention was guided by the test response we did in July. After 12:30 p.m., public safety case management remains available over the radio until 5 p.m. each weekday. However, they will be balancing other participant and operational responsibilities versus doing this intentional engagement along right-of-ways. 2 of the 5 days, public safety case management will be paired with a law enforcement partner in a non-enforcement capacity. On those weekdays, Hope outreach staff will huddle with the group at 9:30 out in the community. Following that in-person collaboration, the work groups will either separate and go their separate, or will separate and continue to outreach and follow up with people who've already been contacted, or will address needs together. If the ordinance passes, similar to other ordinances, we advocate for a 30-day implementation period to share this information with our unhoused community members, engage in training, education, and outreach with businesses, as has already started, and engage with the broader community about what this means. Moving forward, we're committed to continued evaluation of our efforts. We'll continue to assess fiscal impact, operational and organizational structure, all with the aim to set our collective work and the teams who are very dedicated to doing it up for success. Our efforts are rooted in community need alongside public safety and order. We aim to ensure safety and dignity by pairing accountability with compassion, connecting people to services whenever possible, all while supporting community well-being.
And in closing, the proposed right-of-way ordinance is a limited tool focused on conduct in the public right-of-way. It's not a solution to homelessness. And unlike CDOT's blanket trespassing rule, the city ordinance applies only to sitting, lying, kneeling, reclining in certain areas, and is enforced only after education, outreach, and voluntary compliance has failed. Longmont continues to prioritize outreach through HOPE, LEAD, and who make thousands of contacts each year to connect unhoused individuals with shelter, treatment, and services. These efforts remain the city's primary path to long-term solutions. The ordinance simply adds accountability. In 2025, the city committed nearly $1.5 million to homeless services, underscoring that the broader approach still remains service-driven for the city of Longmont. At this time, Ms. Van Doren and I are happy to take any questions that council may have.
It's opened up for questions. Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo-Ferring.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate how you lined out all the, the approach and how you're going to respond. My concern is, do we have enough officers? Do we have the resources to actually keep this sustainable and meet the needs that's out there?
Yeah, I think I want to speak on two parts. One is, and Emily can certainly expand on this, but there are really two issues here. One, public safety has already been dealing with these calls for service. I know that some of the other speakers brought up, well, what does that look like for the financial burden based on some other studies in other states? Again, we're already having to answer the calls for service. You can see we had 450 calls. We're already dealing with the calls for service. We're already utilizing the resources that we currently have on the road that are currently working to address those concerns when we get those calls. There will be a challenge and a task on staff when we talk about our case managements. Mm-hmm. As we look at what we have as far as outreach, specifically outreach case managers working with our unhoused, we have 2 for our lead team that are focused on unhoused, and Hope has 2. And so you're talking about 4 people that have engaged, and Emily, I don't have the exact number, but over 3,000 engagements with unhoused population in a 6-month period. That is a lot of work being done by 4 individuals, both between Hope and us. So yes, there's certainly a need for more engagement in case managers there. But as far as where it stands from public safety, as far as the officer standpoint, we're already managing those calls for service now.
I guess, and then the other piece I want to know, so how you're addressing the calls for service now, and how would that look different once this ordinance is in place? Like, would it require more time?
Yeah, so I
longer
think
engagement. So it's more time on that spot. But if you could just kind of compare the two.
Yes, ma'am. And if I don't answer your question, please stop me and then I'll try to clarify it. What we're hoping is when you look at the 450 calls for service, our goal based on the time frame that both Hope and LEAD identified is really where we're getting the bulk of our calls for services, right? Businesses, people are starting to show up, community starting to wake up, and then we're starting to get calls for service. The goal is that our lead and our Hope case managers, as they go out and engage, are hitting that time frame so public safety doesn't have to pick those calls up. They're getting resolved prior to law enforcement being notified. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, I guess, so they still come out, but I guess I'm wondering the interaction time. So an officer would be at that particular location longer after this ordinance is in place. Am I making sense?
Yeah, not necessarily in my
Okay.
mind. I think a little bit is time will tell, and
Yes.
we'll get data based on the calls for service and how we respond. But how I envision it happening is, yes, we'll be doing the early morning hours proactive time. Our team has been over the radio trying to be accessible to law enforcement for a variety of calls, not just unhoused calls, for almost 3 years now. And we're always looking for opportunity to build that relationship and that accessibility to get the right responder on the right call. We value that our law enforcement need to be focused on safety priorities with resourcing stretched as thin as it is, and even if it's not, right? And so we've tried as a department, and I think we're really committed, as evidence to our co-responder team and our case management team, to trying to look at what other resources and subject matter experts can address somebody's need when it isn't purely safety, right? Or purely criminal.
So if I can answer part of your question, that's a hard question to answer because right now those calls for service take a fairly long period of time depending on where the individuals are sitting.
Okay.
Because one of the challenges, and Eugene and I were out with them on one occasion, one of the challenges that happens is that the private property owners can, they sign a trespass affidavit. In many of these locations, the officers spend a lot of time trying to figure out, are they on the private property or are they on the right-of-way? And as an example, we were out one day because we were getting a lot of calls from the business community, so we went out. Call for service came in, and it happened that the two of us were there with them. Even with the two of us there, it took us about 30 minutes to figure out where we thought they were sitting on the right-of-way. So there's an inherent confusion in these areas, and so if they're on the private property, then you enforce the trespass affidavit.
Okay.
If there's a question, then you don't. And so those right-of-way lines aren't consistent. And so that in its own right creates a fairly significant time sink when they're trying to respond to these calls by these businesses.
Okay. And then what typically happens, so if they're on private property and you move them along, where do people go?
That's a great question. They just can't stay on the property.
Okay.
They can go anywhere they choose.
Yeah. Well,
We have parks and open spaces. I know that was brought up earlier.
Yeah.
But again, our unhoused community has every right to use those spaces as anyone else in that neighborhood or community does. Again, there are park standards that we expect everyone, whether you're housed or unhoused, to follow, but they are welcome to use the same open spaces, green spaces, and parks that the rest of our community is allowed to use.
Okay. And then the other one that really, and this is not, I feel like this is another topic, but having a sanctioned place for people to go. That's for a discussion for another time, but, I really want to look seriously at, what are our sheltering options and what can we do to support the nonprofits that are already doing this work so that we have places for them to go. So these ordinances aren't cruel or unrealistic, but we can actually, I shop, I utilize North Main. I'm at North Main all the time for several reasons. I live nearby there. And sometimes it's a mess. And like, what do we, it can get very frustrating. And I empathize with the residents and people who utilize the business and the business owners, but how, just kind of coming together. And not everyone who is unhoused is disrespectful or is, so it's also, I don't want to just put this blanket assumption over that all these folks are this way and, and putting people in a bucket. And so, I want to be able to address the issue, what the challenge is, but at the same time still treating everybody who's impacted with dignity and what can we do? So, that's an ongoing conversation we talk.
Okay. Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Emily and Zach, what do you say to the folks that say that we are just going to end up moving with this focused approach, end up moving folks that are doing that are sitting in line on a regular basis in these specific areas that you've targeted and identified to somewhere else in town. Do you think that that's really going to happen? Because isn't the focus where that many of those places are already are businesses? Or can you talk a little bit about that? Do you think that's really going to happen?
I mean, I think the reality is a lot of the rules and regulations in any community move people all around the community. I won't shy away from this ordinance having an element of that for some people's life circumstance. But I think the greater conversation and you know, I am sensitive and respect and appreciate that we have attached unhoused you know, needs and issues to this ordinance, but at the end of the day, this is, like Zach said, one small tool, and I think we have some work to do as a community to really lean in and build some trust and collaboration across sectors on that resourcing and where we share responsibility when resources are stretched thin. I have high respect for the partners in this room who have spoken tonight, and I work closely with them and have for many years, and that work won't stop. I think our respect is mutual, right? And we're gonna dig in and we're gonna try to figure this out, and we don't have any magic answers tonight, but I do feel confident that there's a commitment in our community to try and continue to address the underlying issues. So yeah, there might be just some migration, increased displacement or citation, but we also have strategies with our municipal court that we've started well before. You know, we've been talking about this ordinance to try and collaborate and figure out how to streamline and be effective in helping our unhoused folks walk through their legal obligations. So it's continued work. It will always be there, in my opinion.
Thank you. One other thing, in talking to Zach, you know, he was always focusing to me about the in his conversations to me about the that this is not just strictly about some sort of unhoused issue, that it is that if somebody is choosing to go and sit in one of these right-of-ways and finish their sandwich or some other thing like that, that you would treat them in the same way, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Councillor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo Ferrin had already asked quite a few of the questions I was going to ask, but are there any resources or any training that we can provide for business owners? Is that an option? Has that been brought up to where we can, you know, provide them opportunities and training in how to deal with trespassing and people, you know, on their property that won't leave?
Yeah, I'll let you talk to some of that specific training, but I think one thing that we did here in that business meeting on the 4th of September, you know, there was quite a bit of engagement around the spirit of wanting to be a part of the solution and not knowing kind of how to navigate being in community with people who are really struggling. And, you know, I think all of my team's eyes lit up when we heard that, because that is exactly the work we want to be doing in this community to create kind of that collective healing, not to get too touchy-feely, but, there are lots of strategies that we can do. That's part of that 30-day implementation. I think all of our nonprofit partners would have really great ideas on and be subject matter experts on certain parts of that training and education that we are not. And so we would engage in a collaborative effort around that. And it will be ongoing, like any relationship. Businesses are going to change. They're going to have different issues, and we need to be in relationship with them too, so that we can adapt and respond before it maybe becomes this big balloon problem. That would be the goal.
And as it relates to private property, business owner's property or your personal residential property, we did do some work on with our business community maybe several years ago, where we developed a handout, pushed some information out to our neighborhood resource officers to help them better understand what their rights were as a business owner, what they could and couldn't do, particularly in the area of criminal trespasses. And so I think our business community is pretty familiar with that, because they do call us for those moments and times when someone needs to be removed. And so really this is part of that, as Emily was talking about, and what we heard from our business community. I think this was a gap that we identified, is we need to be more engaged with our big business community, hear what they have to say, because they do want to be a partner in this piece. And so I think that's one of the evolution of having the conversation that we did with all of our partners, is that this is a need that we have, both from a public safety standpoint and our nonprofits, to have more engagement and hear the voice of our business community.
Yeah, so back to Mayor Pro Tem, to that point, are we also training them and teaching them how to express to them that in a kind way that there are other areas that they can, that they can guide or direct those people to go to, people who, instead of calling you all, is there a way that they can, I think that the training is very, very important in teaching and fostering community in general. And then also when those business owners or private owners understand, like, they can guide them and say, hey, the park is right up the street, or this is where you can go. I do agree with you about it would be nice to have a facility, but we don't have a facility. But just understanding that we are all in this together, and that means a lot. Before you answer that, I want to get my other question out before the mayor start timing me.
Good point there.
What happens after the 30 days? Like, what are you looking for? What is the end result? What is after the implementation? What data are you looking for? You know what I'm saying? How do you know that you have arrived of implementation and we can move forward? For implementation, or do you continue on until you get to where you need to be?
Yeah. So
as a city, us as a city.
So that implementation, or that 30-day period, to me is just to make sure we have our ducks in a row. We've got staff schedules figured out. We've got who's the officer pairing up with people. We've engaged with business owners. And now we're really feeling like, okay, we got the green light. We can go. Our operations are solid. Now.
I'm sorry, what does the green light look like?
I think it's just the date that we pick. Whenever this is, potentially in place. In terms of moving forward, I think some of the data that I'm looking for to know, are we reaching where we want to go, or are we heading in that direction where we want to go? Results in, it's hard to say. I think Zach has talked about a decrease in calls for service. If case management is over the radio, we may see more, traffic, whether it's considered a call for service or just interactions where they're calling themselves out or putting themselves on a call. So it's more that distribution, the more equitable distribution based on our resourcing. I feel like I'm not really answering your question with the green light. Okay.
So maybe I can address that with you. So what we have typically done in the past, since the last 4 years I've been here, there's been several changes. We've had what I would call dramatic changes in our community, whether one is the camping ban that was put in place, whether it has been standards in our parks, changing the hours, and then of course we have current standards in our buildings that also apply to our parks. But then we also have what I call buggies, we come from south, but grocery carts, where we had those becoming an issue and a problem with our disappearing off of properties. What we did is we did a 30-day educational piece, and that was done. Some of that was done by Hope, our partners. along with staff and law enforcement, going out, educating individuals that we found to be non-compliant, and giving them the understanding that, hey, this can't happen. Moving forward on this date is the date that this would take effect, meaning that after this date, you're likely to be held accountable, charged, receive a citation, or be criminally trespassed from the parks based on your behavior. And so when we talk about that 30-day ramp up, it is simply picking a day. As if council passed, let's just assume council passed the ordinance today. Staff would go back, begin to work with our non-partners, creating a schedule, and we would begin to immediately go out in the community, engage individuals that were in violation of the ordinance, and begin to educate them that in 30 days from to date, that we would begin to enforce that ordinance. And so it's that educational piece that we have done other times where the city has made it what we think is dramatic change, would affect people. And we've educated them in that 30-day period, not much like we didn't do with our traffic cameras recently, in giving a grace period of educating folks that, hey, these are here, here's the new standard. So again, that is the educational piece that we're talking about enforcing. And I want to go back to something that Mayor Pro Tem Susie Hidalgo Ferry mentioned is again, public safety doesn't deal with all of our unhoused folks. It's a very small majority of individuals that we have deal with. And so when we look at those 450 calls, and I don't have the number in front of me, but when I went through it, we tracked the names of the individuals. And so while we may have a population of 150 unhoused individuals that are usually within our community, we're only dealing with a very small percentage of that. A lot of those are individuals we get repeat calls on. And so to her point, we're only talking about a very small group of individuals that would be non-compliant or potentially non-compliant, not our entire unhoused community. And so for us, that green light date is for us to give 30 days of notices, educate the community, and then move forward with the enforcement piece even after we've asked for voluntary compliance. Again, as you recall, the ordinance requires the officer to ask you, hey, could you please move on, before any enforcement action. So again, 30 days of education and explaining the ordinance, and then we still have to apply a request to move on, even after the ordinance is applied.
And that's also training or providing resources for private owners and business owners.
It is correct. And as you heard Hope and Alice talk tonight, they've already started to engage. And so again, that is that piece too. I will tell you that we have developed a pamphlet that Hope asked for, and that we will both have for public safety and for Hope, that outlines some of the things I just talked to you tonight about, to remind our community when we find these things, these are the standards that we have. No alcohol in parks, no drugs in parks. There's these, no camping. Here's where you could do those things. So we do have another resource item to pass out to try to educate as much as we can. In particularly this case, what we're talking about now is our unhoused community, to give them as many resources possible to understand what the expectations are.
Thank you very much. And then I also want to make sure, and then I'm done, Mayor, that make sure that, we heard from Recovery Cafe that other nonprofits don't feel like there's pressure on them to fulfill the gap in these disparities. They are struggling themselves. Nonprofits across the state of Colorado are. So how do we ensure and let them know that we're not trying to push, more work on you or whatever? I don't want them, it feels like that's what it sounded like to me. Like they didn't know that, of course they want to serve people, but at the same time, they may not have the capacity either. So how do we ensure that nonprofits, that we are still there to support them as well, and we're not trying to put more work on them?
Well, I think it starts with conversations. I think it's understanding what their capacity is and what they're able to do. As Emily spoke earlier this evening, we understand the capacity both that our Hope case managers, there, and then the case managers that we have. We understand the capacity. We will not be able to get to everything. We're only covering a very small portion of time in a 7-day week.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's about having conversations with that. We did have to step up some enforcement, as you saw, over in the North Main Street area. And so, yes, those individuals went somewhere. I can't tell you where. I don't know. Only Recovery and Hope and some of our other nonprofits could speak to whether or not they saw an influx of individuals coming into for additional resources or shelter. But again, it starts with a conversation to understand capacities. But I think, it goes back to educating the community on our expectations. And again, we have parks, we have open spaces, all of these things that all of our community, whether you're housed or unhoused, has the ability to use. And they are welcome to use those spaces. And so, Emily, you might want to add a little bit more to that.
I think part of that question, as Jen had talked about, came up in the September 4th meeting with businesses and nonprofits. And, we were kind of in a question and answer period of time within that presentation. And I certainly won't, Jen, I don't want to speak for your perception, but from where I was sitting, I think there was a lot of just dialogue and throwing out ideas from team members who work together really well, boots on the ground folks who work really well together. When I talk about that collective outreach, our staff have done an amazing job building work group collaboration. It's as good as it's ever been. And that's really from the success of our nonprofit partners who allow and support our teams working together, and then our public safety leaders who also allow and support our teams to do that. We're very skilled, in my opinion, at not just pushing the problem. I can speak for my staff, at least, that I think we're very skilled at not just pushing the problem into other areas or onto the partners we're trying to also support and work with. But I hope people would come to me and say that if we were. And I think those channels of communication are strong, and we will be really intentional about not doing that.
Oh, my goodness. Councillor Popkin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. First off, Zach, Emily, I just want to say thank you for all of the thoughtfulness that has gone into tonight's presentation, the ongoing outreach and collaboration and communication with the community. Zach, especially for the conversation that we've had via email multiple times. I sent we had a fairly extensive back and forth via email. And frankly, I would love to, that was just shared with council today. So I'd love unless council has an objection, I'd love to include that in part of the public record.
I don't know. I haven't read it. Can we talk about that later? I don't know what the email says.
Okay. It was an attachment providing responses to some of my questions. I think it's just.
I don't know. I haven't read the.
Okay.
I haven't read
well,
the
at some
letter.
point, I would like that added if
And
possible.
remember that we need to wrap this up, folks.
Yeah, that's fine. Most of my fellow council members have asked questions that I've already had, so I'm down to only 14. Anyway, I would like that added to the record at some point from a public education standpoint. Zach, I'm going to have a question for you all. What level of increased services for people in need of support from enforcement action here, or from directional action, even if it's not enforcement related, are we expecting for groups like Hope and the Recovery Cafe or other nonprofit partners that would be directing there?
I don't think I have a good number based on our interactions because things are so fluid between our partners. I don't know, Zach, if you have any call for service data that people aren't. Without the ordinance in place, it's hard to know what citations and then increased referrals to services might take place.
Sure. At a minimum, it would be fair to assume that from business as usual currently, we'd expect an increase of services or support, right? To some level. We don't know what threshold or order of magnitude.
So, and maybe I don't understand your question, so I apologize. Are you asking ask your question one more time? I want to.
Sure, I'll ask it slightly differently. Is this an unfunded mandate for our nonprofit partners?
Oh, I got you. I don't think the ordinance in itself is an unfunded mandate, because what we're simply asking folks to do is if you're in the right of way, we're asking you to move. And we're not dealing with hundreds of different people. It's typically the same individuals that we're seeing over and over that are in these areas. Right now, what we've seen typically is those individuals have warrants or they have drugs on them. So again, I think what we're talking about here, when we talk about a negative impact on our nonprofits, our partners, is that there might be an impact, but I think what we're seeing, particularly on North Main, when we look at the data, I think what we see is we're dealing with a very small percentage of our unhoused population. So it's not like 150 people are all of a sudden going to be migrating and moving towards our nonprofits looking for resources, because those that are wanting resources are already engaged. And so this really is...
Sure, but I mean, if I understand correctly, sorry to interrupt, but like, if I understand correctly from what both of you presented on, part of the goal of the education, the outreach, the engagement that's not only happening in the first 30 days, but beyond that, is that you're also providing alternatives. When you're redirecting people, you're saying,
Correct.
hey, you just have to move off these streets. You're redirecting them to other services and sharing more information about those very services, right?
Yes, but I would even, and Emily certainly can speak to this, I would even say those services and those places have already been shared before. It's not any new information that we're bringing to the community. But Emily, do you want to talk about that?
So we're looking at other contracts that we have in place. So when we think about contracts that we have with Health and Human Service funding, we're contracting for outreach and we're funding outreach. And so the expectation in that contract is the money that we're spending there should be, by contract, is for outreach and should be engaging the same individuals. And so when you look at the different pieces that we're putting together, those are things that we're already contracting for. Is the question, is the number growing to the point where you need more money in that? That's something that is evaluated through Health and Human Service funding and how we're approaching it. But that's a different arm that's really kind of working in on that outreach, of which then the funding is then connecting with what they're doing with core and lead. So there are other funding mechanisms out there that are being utilized.
Part of what I can speak to in terms of numbers, so we've been working really closely to kind of try and refine some of our unhoused outreach too, as we've gotten better at engagement and trying to figure out, capacity and where people can connect to services and all of that. And as we've looked at, some of the folks who Zach has talked about in terms of the repeat calls for service, folks who have had those repeated calls for service, there are 3 separate groups. Of the 3, I think 9 out of 11, we already have open services with our team that we've been engaging them in that resource navigation and connecting to resources across the region. It's not just Longmont, right? In the second group, we know 16 of 20 already. In the third group, we know 6 of 8. So I think the vast majority of folks who may be struggling the most and having a harder time complying with the ordinance, we've already built a relationship with them from the case management and core team, and we would be doing the same work we're already doing to try and address their needs.
I appreciate that. Thanks. There were some speakers earlier who talked about other strategies that could be considered or deployed to mitigate some of the concerns about the problem we're trying to address here. I guess transparently, I'm concerned that this approach is merely just going to move people a few blocks over or send more people into our judicial system if the enforcement action that we'd been enabling is then authorized. And it's an affirmative defense approach too, which means they have to then prove it after the fact, correct? So I guess, and I've talked to our city attorney about this before. I've talked to Zach about this. I've expressed my concern about the affirmative defense approach in general for something like this. And so I guess what other strategies have been considered? I think diversion warnings came up, additional engagement. I know you're doing a lot already. And so I guess I'm wondering, what is additive to do here?
So I think I think what we want to talk about, or what I want to share, is I know our human services, public safety, and municipal probation are having some preliminary conversations around what happens when an individual gets a citation. Like, let's just say an unhoused individual gets a citation. Because what we do recognize and what we are quite aware of is, and it was mentioned earlier, that when they get a citation, they're not going to show up for court, or again, that's there with them. Well, we recognize that's an issue. And so we really want to get to the root of the issue of how do we get them to the resources they need. And so because we have a new prosecutor and because we have some opportunities now, that's a bigger discussion that would be taking place among city staff and hopefully our nonprofits on what can we do as a diversionary, meaning that you go into the judicial system, but there's an exit ramp. Because we understand we can't enforce our way out of everything, but we really want to get individuals who are struggling with mental health, substance abuse issue, which we do find a lot of our unhoused folks are. We want to get them into the resources they need to. And so again, that is part of this conversation that Christina Pacheco, her Human Services Division, Public Safety, and our municipal probation and prosecutor are going to have started, but will continue to have conversations on what are some other ways we can divert people from the judicial system.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess just to put a finer point on that, like, why is this approach going to help us get people towards the services that they need?
So I think from my standpoint, this approach, speaking about the collaboration or kind of the add-on with the ordinance of this organized operation of engagement, why it's going to help people get the services is because we've seen a good track record over time with our LEAD program, the Angel Initiative, and now our unhoused services to help people get to a place where they've identified they want to be, right? Self-directed goals and, health and safety, right? We have had, and I will never diminish the value of diversion. It's a very important component to the success of kind of a complex solution to a complex issue. But for LEAD in particular, some of our greatest successes have been when we walk alongside people through these systems, through these existing systems. There's a lot of healing and efficacy that happens when people can successfully navigate their obligations and connect with care that they feel is the right fit for them. And that's what our case managers and my respect for our partners is I believe they're all experts in that too. And we are all very relationship driven. So I think this works. And again, time will actually tell if it does, but this works based on historical information and the people who I know will be doing the work.
Yeah, so I've been looking into this policy approach in other cities, and mostly it seems to result in initial displacement and increased citations and arrests. Now, that doesn't mean what you're proposing exactly, and the approach is identical, right? So I want to make sure that's clear. But just because this is another tool we can enable doesn't mean it's a tool that's inherently effective, right? And so I guess, have you seen evidence that this type of strategy is actually helpful in connecting individuals into supportive services or into more healthier, safer environments?
So I've looked at some of the same studies that you're bringing up. I think there was two particularly out of California that were looked at from, I think, 2012 or so. You know, I think the strategy overall is that we spend, LEAD staff and HOPE does an amazing job of going out and engaging individuals. Last summer, not this summer, but the summer before last, we did a survey with our unhoused folks to really truly understand, like, what are your needs? What do you need? What are you struggling with? How can we get you these resources? And when we began to look at all of that data, there's a wide reason and a wide of what people are struggling with and what their needs are. But one of the things that was insightful to an extent, and what you're asking is basically, well, this is going to, and if I'm not correct, please stop me, that this ordinance somehow is going to help people get into treatment and do things. What we found is that with all the engagement that HOPE and LEAD have been doing for years, there are still people who won't use the shelter because they don't feel safe. And HOPE is very safe. They won't use it because there's too many rules. And so what we find in our community is no matter how much resources we pour into it and how many times we present opportunities to individuals, it's not until they get to that moment in time that they're ready for a change, that the services are there, have been there and are there waiting for them. And so what I think is different about Longmont, and I can't speak to what's going on in California in 2012, but what I think is different about Longmont is the fact is that we can come together. We don't have to agree on this ordinance, but we can come together as both the city and nonprofits and adjust what we're doing to try to address the needs of the community, to reach out to our unhoused population to try to get them the resources they need and educate them on the things. But we also recognize and understand that there are certain individuals that no matter what you do and how much education you'll have, will never comply with what the expectations of the community are. And so that's that accountability piece. Now, what we can look at doing and what we are talking about is that once you are cited, well, what's the next alternative? How do we now leverage court to require you to get the treatment? How do we leverage the judicial system to get you into and accountable to the treatments that you need to get to help you on the path of success? Again, the idea is we want you to get there on your own through some of the services we provide, but unfortunately, some people have to be held accountable as far as and required to go attend that. Maybe that's not your question, maybe that's not what you were asking me, but again, the primary avenue is through outreach and education and compassion. And unfortunately, there is an enforcement piece at times that happens, but there's still, I believe, compassion in those enforcement moments and opportunities that can help people lead out of where they're at and get the services that they need.
Yeah, no, that spoke mostly to the majority of my question. Look, I think what's unfortunate here is that Longmont's doing a lot of innovative solutions in public safety, in education, and outreach, well beyond this situation, and yet this is the focal point right now, right? And so I want to recognize that. At the same time, I can't support this in its current form. I do have a couple of ideas of how we could potentially make it better if my fellow council members are already there to support it. I would like to know kind of where folks stand so that I can decide if it's worth proposing some of those amendments or not. I don't like the affirmative defense aspect of this. I think I would encourage us to take maybe a 3-month engagement education phase-in period to not, put an overburden on city staff and our partners as well. And I have a few other thoughts that I might add in depending on kind of where my fellow council members are. So at this point, I'll reserve my time. Thank you.
Councilor Christ.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Chief Artis and Ms. Van Dorn. Performed admirably under pressure, I must say. I believe preventative and proactive approaches are usually best practice. And so I appreciate your initiative here and what you're trying to do. I actually think something's got to give for the businesses. So my question is, can you bring us an update in 6 months, realizing that, the data might still be messy at that time, but we may have a learning curve where we realize there's some tweaking that needs to happen. And I'm wondering if that would make it more acceptable to other counselors, that we can kind of monitor the situation and hear back from our partners also as to what they're experiencing within the next 6 months. Because I think initially there is going to be some displacement and some bewilderment and just some change in behavior, but that's part of what you're trying to affect, isn't it? But some change in behavior in terms of getting the help needed. So for me, I'm in favor of going forward and see where this leads us, and I would move that we accept ordinance 2025-39.
Can you hold 1 minute, because I have not spoken. I'm waiting for everyone. Oh, thank you. It's my turn. Woo. I want to give a little bit of history from my perspective as to why this happened anyway. We have had significant challenges with the corner of 17th and Main Street. With the help of our cameras that we have put there, we've noticed that there have been drug sales to people who are sitting, standing, lying in that area. And we know where the drug dealers were coming from. That was captured by our cameras. Thank you very much for installing those. But from my perspective, wherever young people are going to be congregating or to be a part, that is where the drug dealers are going to go to interact with them. That was one of the reasons that this was brought up from my perspective. So it isn't just that we're not trying to criminalize anyone, but we are also trying to keep people safe. And it is our job, it is the public safety's job to do that. So the other thing that I heard was that people have no place to go. People don't have bathrooms. So when you're discussing and having study sessions, what are the actual action items that we can take? And I'm a little frustrated because I addressed this with churches, with other places, with a little task force that I brought up, and my pushback came from the commissioners, big time, in that housing first is what we should do with people who are experiencing mental health, addiction, anything. But what happened was housing first ends up being hotel rooms, motel rooms, etc. And we had 2 or 3 hotels and motels be burned down or have to be closed because of methane and fentanyl use that destroyed some of those. So my question to the people who are engaged, also I want to say that this council has to walk us a line here. On one side, we're responsible for the fiscally for the city of Longmont. The other side is that we have to answer to businesses and residents. How do we walk that line? It's really hard. Both sides are very important. I'm not shutting anybody down. So I am going to vote for this because I don't want any more studies at this point. I want action. And if it is action that we need as far as where do people go, I want the community to step up. I asked churches to help our task force. We didn't get a lot of support from churches. We didn't get much support from the commissioners. When we're talking about money and we need caseworkers, we need 4 more, we need this or this, we need to lean hard on our commissioners to give us that support. I think that we've done a lot with our neighborhood resource team, with everything that Zach and his teams are doing with LEAD and all of the nonprofits. But we're always going to have homeless people. Never will they go away. But if we want to be able to help the ones with mental health problems, with addiction, we can't just meet them somewhere and say, good luck, I'll try to find you in the neighborhood somewhere later on. If they don't have some place to go, are we wasting our time? I don't have the answer, but that's my question to you. Unless you can give somebody a place to go through withdrawal and then have a plan for them with a caseworker, I don't know how we're going to move forward to help people. We're always having the same discussions. So I'm going to vote for this because it's a tool in our toolbox, as Tim Waters always used to say, talk about his toolbox. So I am going to end the conversation and ask for a vote.
Are you going to second my motion?
No one that I know. No. Can I have a second for, no, he's not.
No.
And we're done with the question. We have a motion on the table. We need to address that.
I think, I would like to hear his amendment.
Okay.
And I actually want I want an update in 6 months also.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Thank you, Council. Couple of thoughts that I wanted to put on the table, and they're only partially refined, so I'd welcome other suggestions or contributions or versions of this. I won't take it personally if you think there's a better way to get at this. This is not in the ordinance, but I just mentioned it before. You mentioned 30 days. Understand where you're coming from. I recognize the strain that some of our partners are under right now, that the staff doesn't exactly have a surplus of time. So the first thing was whether we need to codify this as an amendment or not. I was going to suggest that we have at least a 90-day period for education before any enforcement action would be taken effect. at a minimum. Then I don't like, and my amendment would be to strike the affirmative defense piece of this, and I'd look to the city attorney to think about the other mechanism of how this. I know we have affirmative defense in other parts of our code, but I don't like the outcome that if this does get to a citation or an arrest situation, it's not proven in that moment. It's you get the citation, you have to go to court and prove that you were in a medical emergency, or that you were, to quote, sitting upon an object intended for sitting in the public right of way. Sitting in a public sidewalk at or near a transit stop. Like, I don't like that that's an affirmative defense. That just feels like we're creating, it just feels like we're making it harder for people to prove that they weren't trying to violate this. And I know that in practice, I hope, and I know Chief Artis and I have had multiple discussions about this, that I hope, I trust that our officers would do everything that they can to kind of read the moment, read the situation. But there's in theory, there's in practice, and then there's what's in law. And I don't like that that's all subject to affirmative defense. In fact, I'd be open to splitting the difference and making some of those affirmative defense, but that just seems like we're getting more confusing. So I guess a question for the city attorney: if we didn't have this as an affirmative defense, but still had this as something that could be enforced, what would be the other phrasing that we'd use here?
Mayor and council, Eugene May, city attorney. I'm not quite sure what the goal is, so I can't really.
It's to prove their defense, right? And so it's to prove that it's to prove that they have a medically confirmable disability or that they have a medical emergency.
I mean, I think one outcome, if you take away the structure of the ordinance, is everybody's going to have a medical emergency. Everybody's going to have an Uber on the way. Everybody is everybody. And so then it really, I think, takes away a lot of the teeth of the enforcement. I got client direction to make an ordinance that will be a remedy of last resort when we have uncooperative people on the right-of-way impacting the safety and use of our right-of-ways. I think this is the most effective way to do that. And so that's why we constructed and structured the ordinance this way. And it's very similar to the other ordinances in this chapter.
So I guess because I don't want to strike the defense aspect of this. There should be a defense piece of this if this is going to pass. I don't like the affirmative defense piece of this. And so the other way we could we could add, it's an affirmative defense to a violation of the section if and only if a person cannot prove beyond, I don't know, not a reasonable doubt, but what the preponderant, no, it's not even that in this moment either. I might need more time to work on the language on this. The last thing I wanted to note, I see transit, or actually two more things. I see transit gets an affirmative defense exception if we keep that language. Chief Artis mentioned Uber ride there, like should ride shares and other forms of transportation pickup also get an affirmative defense? I'd at least like to make sure that that is inclusive there of multiple things and not just a bus or other form of transit, though I think that's the only one we have. If they're waiting for ride Longmont, is that an affirmative defense? I mean, I'd hate to have someone go through the court system to say that they were waiting for ride Longmont, but that's the implication of this if this is taken to the logical conclusion. And then the last thing, look, council, we're talking about impacts on some of our partners. We've heard from some of them tonight. We do have council contingency funds. And if we think there's an increased level of service ask, we have some funding here that it probably wouldn't cover another full-time staff member, but I would look favorably upon either whether we can earmark it with this or whether we earmark it separately. But, we have supported some of our nonprofits recently through more strained times, and frankly, if they think that this is going to potentially increase that strain, and So does some of our staff think that there might be additional services provided to support this? I don't think it would be a crazy concept to incorporate that in, whether it's in this moment or separately from this.
I think it has to be a separate, because council contingency is available. If we put this in the ordinance, that kind of ties that, that amendment to the next council and to the next council. So
we could call it one
what we're
time.
saying- It has to be separate. Let's
Okay.
vote on this, and then if you would want to make a motion about council contingency, fine. I'm going to second Councilor Chris's motion at this point. If you want to make a motion, because now we can discuss it.
No.
If you want to make a motion to amend, then you can.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll take this one at a time. I'd like to motion, let me get the right language. So, my first amendment, I would like to motion to amend the ordinance, page 4, line 15. Well, that's currently says sits upon it's an affirmative defense if someone sits upon a public sidewalk at or near a transit stop while waiting for public transportation. I would like to amend that to say while waiting for public transportation or rideshare or other form of non-public transportation. Well, thank you. I'll take that as a second. It's not a friendly amendment. It's an amendment to before we even vote on the ordinance. So.
There's a motion. There's a motion, so you'd be amending it.
That's your second.
And that's me.
Okay.
Second.
Sure. Thank you.
Does your second support that?
I don't have to.
You don't have to.
You don't. So that amendment was was accepted by
Okay.
Councilor Christ.
Great. A question for Eugene.
Could I hear that language again? I'm concerned other form of transportation is, hey, my friend's coming to pick me up.
Exactly, and they could be sitting there for all day long.
The language I'd proposed was public transportation, rideshare, or other form of private or other non-public transportation. I understand your concern, but if someone is saying, my mother is coming to pick me up, I mean, at a minimum, that should be subject to affirmative defense, in my opinion.
Clock says no.
Is that a enforcement? I mean, we have a part of the ordinance here that says sits upon an object intended for sitting. Are we going to be debating what object is intended for sitting in that moment, or is it just a bench? If so, we should specify that it's a bench.
It's your motion. I raise my concern.
You know, I'm going to butt in here for a little bit because this is very confusing, and it shouldn't be. I would like to pass this ordinance and then review it in 6 months, and then review it in a year. We can change it. We can amend it later. We don't even know what the pros and cons of it will be. It is a way to help businesses and to get more participation out of our nonprofits working together.
I understand that. I'm already hearing that that's happening, and I guess I'm really not comfortable with
Then
the
you can just vote no on it.
I know. I'm trying to make it less bad, in my opinion. And so I guess.
So she accepted your friendly amendment.
Okay.
Let's move on and vote.
Thank you. Then I
see if
have
that
one more
passes.
motion. I have one more amendment that I'd like to propose.
But would you like this to fail because one of the amendments they don't want, counselors don't want?
No, I'd like to propose one.
I know.
I'd like to propose one more amendment, which is
Okay.
I understand that there's a sunset. I understand you want to reevaluate in 6 months, but I'd actually like to add a sunset provision, in that this is inherently no longer an active ordinance after 12 months, and then council can reevaluate truly, but it wouldn't be a continued ordinance on the books subject to removal. So I would like to motion that it is in effect for 12 months from the date of enactment.
And if you want that to be a motion, then we have to vote on it first.
Right.
And do you want it to be an motion or do you want it to be an amendment?
I'm motioning to amend the.
You don't need a motion. You just like to amend.
Okay, then I'd like to amend it. I thought that was a motion, but that's fine.
Do you accept that?
I don't accept it that way, but I agree we should review it at 6 months and would agree to review it again at 12 months. And at that point, we could choose to not continue with it. Or whoever is on the council at that time, we could choose at that time to sunset. We don't want to make it a hard stop at 12 months at this point.
So that amendment was rejected.
There will be adding my own.
Okay.
It wasn't originally included.
So we do have a motion on the table. Yes. Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I'm concerned. We sit here with legal counsel giving us, good legal, solid legal advice, and I'm concerned about adding in something that is so vague there on line 14 and 15 that it would be difficult to enforce, and I really encourage the initiator of the motion to take another consideration at what that really looks like. If we're going to be taking another look at this in 6 months, 12 months, and maybe sunsetting it, let's leave it as it is, respectfully. The thing is that we have asked staff and community members to take time. We look here at this document here and try to figure out, how we're utilizing our staff's time most efficiently, effectively, and I just don't want to see us taking advantage of that in a way that is going to just add work, especially in a time when staff is, is kind of stretched. So, that I would really encourage you to let the ordinance stay as is presented right here, and let us take another look at it in 6 months if that's what people you would like as not a stipulation, but just as a request, and in 12 months, and then we can look at that.
Councilor Popkin, really fast.
Councilmember McCoy, I respect where you're coming from on that. So I will offer a friendly amendment to my previous amendment to clarify the language. I don't want to get rid of it entirely, but I'll offer much more precise language. So instead of saying, and I don't think this salvages the entire policy in my mind, but if it makes this at least a little better, sits upon a public sidewalk at or near a transit stop while waiting for public transportation, ride share, or ride Longmont. I'm reducing the vague language there on the transportation. It doesn't.
Ride Longmont is ride share.
Well, but like
Uber versus.
Again, that's private.
If we want to just, if that's included in rideshare, that's fine. While waiting for public transportation or ride shares.
Again, that's public, so it didn't really.
No, Uber and Lyft are not public transportation.
you have to show that you have a contract.
That's
I mean private. I'm sorry. That's private. So how did you change that amendment?
for public, it was included before, but it may have included more things before. So I'm narrowing the focus out of respect for what Council Member McCoy raised, just to say waiting for public transportation or ride share
How does it read right now, Councilor?
while waiting for public transportation.
And you're adding
Ride
ride
share.
share or ride Longmont?
Correct.
I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
At the risk,
City
can I
manager?
jump in?
Absolutely, please.
At the risk of making this more complicated, I wanted to make sure that council clearly got one of the points that Zach made in this presentation, and it's when he talked about CDOT. So CDOT has made the decision to put a trespassing order in certain areas that are adjacent to the community. Why Zach put that out is because the businesses could petition CDOT to make the same designation in the areas that we're talking about. And at that point, CDOT is like any other property owner that chooses to pull a trespass affidavit. CDOT's the owner of that property. The city's not the owner of the property. And so I didn't want at some point businesses to petition them and they make a decision and council say, why didn't we know about this? That's what Zach was talking about in that slide, because it is CDOT right away. And so the community, the businesses could petition them to make the same designation. Then it becomes trespassing. And then we would enforce that like a trespassing issue on private property based on the ownership structure. So I wanted to make sure that was clear, that there's another piece in play, and that's a change condition that actually occurred in between the first reading and this reading.
Do you know what prompted CDOT to make that change?
They had a large cleanup and other issues that they needed to deal with north of Walmart on off of 166, off of 66, off of 66. And I think they're doing that in other communities too. I think it's not just here. I think those requests are coming in from other communities as well. Because they honestly said, we have the signs made, we'll give them to you.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that was clear.
Thank you. It is very clear. I'm going to call on Councilor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm so confused now. I don't know what amendment we're at, I don't know what's on the table right now. I feel like what you all are already doing, you putting in the work, you already are trying to collaborate. The only thing that I would like to see is if we can have a longer engagement before you implement. That's what I would like, because if we can get our nonprofits, making sure that we have that communication with them, making sure that everyone who are involved, which is the entire community, that they understand that we're in it together, what resources are needed for businesses, what resources are needed for private property owners, with educating them, our community, so that we can work together and understand the repercussions or the unintended consequences of whatever decisions that may be made. So for me, it's more about community engagement, more engagement, finding out how we can support those who are unhoused, that may, be those who are unhoused that will be impacted by this ordinance, and also the businesses that will be impacted by this ordinance. So if we can come together and have more engagement, a longer engagement period, and then you all come back to us and let us know what you found out, what data you have, I will support that. Because then there's more communication that's going on, and there's nobody saying, oh, I didn't know if we're going to have this or that on us. So if we can have a longer engagement period before implementation, I would definitely support it. And I think, and then if you can come back before the implementation to let us know the results of that education and communication within the community first, before you implement, then we'll know ourselves as a council all the work that you have done. Not that, you already have been doing amazing work, but look how much, when you come together with Hope, look how much that has happened. So I can only imagine if we had a longer engagement period, what more will happen with other nonprofits. So Councilor Yarbrough would like that. I don't know what else. I don't know what's on the table. I don't know what we have to undo to redo. So
Let's go back. Hang on, Counselor Yarbrough. Counselor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Now that there is a motion on the table, I'm discussing the motion versus just asking questions. I made this statement the first time this came around. I feel there's no material changes since I made this statement before. Inherently speaking, there are legal remedies to problematic behavior. Last time I checked, substance use in public, illegal. Dealing drugs in public, illegal. Defecation in public, illegal. Sexual acts in public, illegal. Urinating in public, illegal. These are already have legal remedies to them for public safety to address. And if the mayor says that there are cameras catching folks dealing drugs actively, that doesn't require anybody to testify necessarily. And it seems that if businesses have issues with people, they should be willing to testify if they're seeing said problematic behaviors. It's a similar concept to how a lot of people are not prosecuted for firing off illegal fireworks, is because there's nobody that wants to testify against them, as in their neighbors don't want to do that, right? I'm sure business owners would be happy to testify against people urinating or defecating on their properties or adjacent to their properties, or dealing drugs, or having lewd sexual acts, or having substance abuse issues adjacent to their properties. So I feel there are adequate legal remedies besides sitting and lying, which in and of itself is innocuous, right? Somebody sitting and lying really should not be offensive to anybody who doesn't clutch pearls on a regular basis. So I can't get behind any amendment that would make this better. None of it makes it better. It's bad policy. It's going to push things into neighborhoods, which is going to be even more problematic for us. And so I really feel that this is not the answer. I don't believe that this was ordinance that City Council directed. I believe this one came from the business community talking to public safety, not City Council putting this direction forward. So I can't be in favor of this ordinance in any form. Thank you.
Okay, we do have a motion on the table. Did you accept this friendly amendment?
Mayor, if I might ask,
Yes.
could I request that we take a motion to amend one piece at a time and go that way?
Exactly.
And then go by a ordinance as amended if we get there?
Yes.
That would be cleaner than what I have captured thus far.
One amendment at a time, which is what I wanted to do. Do you remember that amendment?
I will move that we accept ordinance 2025-39 as written.
Well, we need Counselor Popkins to withdraw his amendment, if that's the case.
I don't know where we are.
I'll withdraw it. I appreciate the passion and thoughtfulness that Councilmembers Rodriguez and Yarbrough brought in the last few minutes as well. I agree with both of them in different ways there. If it's gonna be implemented, I want to see that period of education and outreach go on. I think we already have laws on the books that criminalize the very things that most people are concerned about here. So I will withdraw it.
Thank you. So I will second that. The motion is to pass, I'm sorry, do we have this up here? Yes, to pass and adopt a bill for an ordinance as written, to pass the ordinance of Title 10, amending that as written. Let's vote. And it failed. With four, Councilor Hidalgo-Ferring, Councilor Popkin, Councilor Yarbrough, Councilor Rodriguez, opposing. It's dead. You didn't make them.
We can't change a vote. Yeah.
You can't reconsider, but I can.
Okay. She can reconsider. Oh, she can reconsider, you can't, because it failed.
Oh, I thought it was, okay. You can but it has to be at a next meeting.
Yeah, you can,
Yeah, it does.
you can do it now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wow, I need to go to school.
This is a tough night. We haven't even gotten to the budget.
I know, I'm really getting frustrated with it.
Sorry for the mix-up. Told you I was confused. So I want to reconsider my motion, my vote for ordinance 1024 and 130. And then I add the, and I want to move to amend,
Reconsider first.
oh, reconsider. I want to reconsider.
Yeah, just a point of parliamentary procedure here. So a motion to reconsider, it can only be made by the prevailing side, which is correct. And then this is a motion to reconsider. Right now, we'd be voting on whether to reopen basically the item, whether to reconsider. We're not taking a revote on the actual ordinance, correct?
Then I can make an amendment.
Does the second have to be?
Yes.
Then I can make an amendment, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Would you, Councilor Popkin, do you want to second that?
No, I don't.
Motion to reconsider.
And then just one more clarification. Does the second for this motion also have to be on the prevailing side?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I can go grab Robert's rules and correct if I'm wrong.
All right, I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilor Yarbrough to reconsider 2025-39, seconded by Councilor Crest. Let's vote. And that fails with I'm sorry, it carried, I'm sorry, I need a break. It carries with 5-2 with Councilor Rodriguez in opposition.
Okay, now.
Now you can make your friendly amendment.
Okay, yes, it is friendly.
You know, you are.
Okay, so I want to amend it with an extension of the engagement period with the results of the engagement period come back to council before implementation. Did that make sense?
How long do you want that engagement period? It's 30 days now, isn't it?
It's 30 days.
What do you want it to
I think, let's see, what is this, September, October, November? Ooh,
be? Yeah, exactly.
60 days? That's not a lot of data. What you think? 90 days. I won't be here. Okay, 90 days. 90 days. Don't play.
Engagement period for 90 days and then?
Bring it back to council with the results of the engagement with the community. Yes. Before implementation. Did that make sense? Do y'all understand, or am I confusing you?
I don't understand it because.
So we have 30 days of engagement. That's what they're doing for 30 days. All I'm doing is increasing it to 90 days.
So you can amend the ordinance to just the part that says 30 days to 90 days, but we can still vote on it tonight
And then enforcement would automatically happen in 90 days.
in 90 days.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, weren't they gonna, that's how it was with the 30 days, right?
No.
Yes.
Well, yes, but.
Yeah.
But not what you're asking. It sounded like what you wanted to.
Only thing I'm changing are the 90, is
Okay,
from
great.
30 to 90, and then just,
Okay.
I don't know where in the ordinance it specifies this. It doesn't, right? This is just operational protocol on how you were going to implement this, correct?
Correct.
We can codify that if we wanted to, but my understanding is that that was just out of like your intended to be thoughtful implementation and do it right. That was just operationally.
Yeah, there is nothing in the ordinance for 30 days. It is how we have done other ordinances the council had passed. We've done an educational engagement piece for 30 days.
Well, can we do it for 90 days?
So it's completely up to council.
Yeah.
It's at
Okay.
council's direction to staff as if how long that engagement period could be.
Okay.
You don't want like 50 days, so you're still here?
Okay, so that's my amendment. I don't know if it'll pass or not, but that's,
So we're not really changing the ordinance at all, because this is a direction to staff. It is not in the ordinance. So, well, no, we don't need to reconsider at all. It, because,
died, it failed.
we are, yeah,
So
she wants to reconsider.
We're back at stage one.
with 90 days added to it for engagement.
That's your amendment.
That's my amendment.
So the way I understand it is you have a motion to amend the ordinance to include language with a 90-day public engagement period. So we would have to add language to the ordinance stating that, correct, Eugene?
If you wanted it added to the ordinance, yes, we would need to amend it. I just heard 90-day implementation. I didn't hear a motion to amend the ordinance.
It was to amend.
It was.
Okay.
But there is no second as of
Di-
yet.
I thought Diane, oh, no, she just seconded the other one.
so the motion is to amend the ordinance to include language that states that the implementation period would be 90 days after the ordinance goes into effect. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you second that?
I did.
Anybody?
I did not. We're gonna have like 4 new counselors, and we have to re-explain this to them, you know.
Everything is on video.
They get to, that's the exciting part.
So, is there a second for this? Is there a second for this motion with this amendment? I mean, to pass the ordinance with the amendment?
90 days is too long.
No second.
Yep, it died because of a lack for a second.
But it's still back.
We're still back to, yeah, we're still back to the.
vote for it because you passed, the reconsideration
Do
passed.
you want to go for 60 days?
Do you want to make the amendment for 60 days?
I'm just throwing out ideas.
I would go out 50 or
Throw an
45,
idea.
yeah.
So the vote on the ordinance failed.
No. We're just-
No, on the original ordinance, without the reconsideration.
So we already voted on the
I know.
reconsideration, so it passed.
But I want to know what she wants to do with it.
It failed.
Do you want to withdraw that?
No, it failed
It
for lack of
failed.
second. Failed for lack of
Okay.
second.
So do you,
So we still need a motion for what happens with this ordinance. Does it pass or fail? We're back to that point.
okay. So now we have to,
Vote to
Re-vote?
pass or vote to deny this ordinance?
okay. Let's vote again.
Okay.
The motion's been made.
Because we reconsidered, we brought it back.
Now we have to
We voted to reconsider.
Now we need a motion.
I know, that's what I'm waiting for. We need to re-vote on this ordinance because she voted to reconsider it.
I'll move ordinance 2025-39 with a 50-day, 45-day, so you have time.
What?
Implementation, with a 45-day implementation. Let's try that.
No, that's an amendment, so you have to make a motion to amend it.
No, it's not, because we've reconsidered. She can make that motion.
She can if she, yeah.
But she didn't make the okay.
just made that motion.
make the motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want you here.
All right. We need to vote on a bill for an ordinance amending Title 10 of the Longmont Municipal Code by adding Section 10.24.130 concerning sitting or lying down in commercial districts with a 45-day implementation. Let's vote. And that failed with Counselor Christ and Counselor, can you bring that back up?
And your,
Yarbrough.
we needed you.
Counselor Yarbrough, Counselor Christ, and Counselor McCoy for it.
Do you want to reconsider?
No, I don't want to reconsider. I want to take a break.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh. We're moving on.
Exactly. Oh, well, I'll follow up with you too.
So we have, the next on our agenda is the item moved from the consent agenda. It is item E, and that was removed by Counselor Popkins, so I will turn it over to you, Counselor.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Just a couple clarifying questions, I think, for city staff on this item. We had multiple different capital improvement program amendments. What much of the funding shifts here seem to be about the parking deck retaining wall related to the Public Safety and Justice Center.
Correct.
Was that was that planned, or did something happen in the capital improvement process? Like, what's going on there?
Was not planned. So what actually happened in this case is that we had failure of the retaining wall. And the failure of the retaining wall actually came about because of the irrigation systems that were in the landscaping. So as we've talked about the Safety and Justice Building, it just seems like it's a gift that keeps on giving, in that every time we get into something, we find something worse. So the retaining wall failed. They had to go in and put some jersey barriers on one side of it to ensure that it wouldn't continue failing. We're monitoring that on a regular basis. So what they did is they began getting quotes to see what would it cost to replace the retaining wall. The base level quote was $1.8 million, assuming that it was a perfect implementation. The problem with just replacing the retaining wall is that you have to anchor into the alleyway and you have to anchor into the street, which starts creating conflicts with utilities. And our gut was that we had to anticipate that there was going to be utility conflicts. So then I estimated that it would be, wouldn't be unheard of to see the 1.8 turn to 2.5 or 3, depending on how bad that went in the construction cycle. We began evaluating what it would cost to add an additional parking deck to replace the parking spots that we lost associated with the hotel in the area. And that number, based on our purchasing provisions, came in at a not to exceed $4 million. So for a relatively modest increase, you're getting a parking deck added to it. They're going to actually concrete the parking lot instead of having it paved. And you don't have to anchor into the road or the alleyway and potentially have a conflict with the utilities in that area, because the parking deck structure actually is what is stabilizing the retaining wall as part of the engineering structure. And so that's why we're doing this, but no, that was not anticipated.
Good, thank you.
And for councils, this is when we talked about in the budget, the 2.6 million that we treated as one time, we were actually able to utilize that other funding sources from streets and other utilities, because they wanted to avoid the potential conflict with their utilities as well. So multiple funding sources coming into this.
Yeah, thank you. No further questions on my end, and seeing no other mics on, I will go make a motion to approve item E, accepting the 8 capital improvement program amendments.
It's been moved by Councilor Popkins, seconded by Councilor McCoy, to pass item E9E on our consent agenda. Let's vote.
Oh, I'm a yes as well. No, I clicked it.
Oh, no, mine is just waiting.
Yeah, it says waiting. I'm a yes.
Let's do a voice vote. All those in favor of to pass 9E on the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Now it popped up.
Oh, yeah.
All right. We're down to general business, which is our 2026 proposed budget presentation. And we have once again here our financial department.
Hey, Teresa, let me jump in real quick. So I wanted to provide council some information that I got today. So the city managers also sit in Boulder County, set in as the recommending body to the county commissioners on the affordable housing tax. Not to spend a lot, there's nuances to that, but one of the things we all talked about was budget. And the thing that was, I think, fairly clear is that I think everyone in that meeting is coming in with the same assumption that we did on sales and use tax, and that everyone's keeping it flat to the current year. So I wanted to give you that information to know that, and again, reinforce that this is not something that is just specific to us. All jurisdictions are taking the same approach.
Thank you. Turn it over to Teresa Malloy.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Teresa Malloy, Chief Financial Officer. And Sandra and I are going to be kind of tag teaming the first part of this for you. So we do have a few topics to cover with you, and we'll try to be brief and quick for you this evening. So we're going to start with new positions, and I'm going to turn it over to Sandra.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Sandra Cifuentes, Budget Manager. So as Teresa indicated, we're going to start with new positions today. Our 2026 proposed budget includes 12 new FTE. So these are full-time positions. They are being added across the funds you see on your screen. The reason why some of these are partial is because there is one position that's split across two different funds. So we have 2.15 in the water fund, 0.85 in open space, 1 in the street, 4 in the electric and broadband fund, and 4 in the technology services fund. Your council packet does include a little bit more information on these positions specifically, and the reasoning for us adding them to the 2026 proposed. This does bring our total FTE authorized for 2026 to a total of 1,168.905 FTE. So let me go over what the 12 positions are. So we did add 1 FTE in the which is a watershed ranger 2. This is from the water fund. 1 watershed forest stewardship technician, also funded from the water fund. 2 journey line workers. Both of these are being funded through the electric and broadband fund. 1 apprentice line worker, 1 line crew supervisor, both of those also from the electric and broadband fund. And then we have 1 traffic signal technician, and this is being funded from the street fund. And then we do have 1 natural resource tech. This is that 1 position that I mentioned was split across 2 departments. So I believe 0.15 of that is in the water and 0.85 in the open space fund. And then we are adding 4 fixed term positions. These are all being funded through the new technology services fund and include a technical project manager, a technical project coordinator, an internal project communication specialist, and a product owner. Again, the packet will include information as to why we are in need of these additional FTEs. And you may have noticed there are no new FTE in the general fund or the public safety fund, which we've mentioned in previous meetings. And I'll turn it back to Teresa unless there's any questions.
Seeing none, we'll let you move on.
Okay, so last week we did talk quite a bit about incremental development revenue and the proposed policy change from 200 permits to 300 permits. Tonight I did just want to highlight there is just a little bit over $958,000 of incremental development revenue in our proposed budget. Most of that is coming from building permit revenue with a smaller portion coming from plan review revenue. And this is the use of that $958,000 of incremental development revenue. Excuse me, 579,000 of it is really being used to cover positions and temp wages and overtime. Some of the positions have been covered by incremental development revenue, as you can see, for a number of years, goes back to 2015. This year, we also have 379,000 of one-time incremental development revenue, covering a variety of things that you can see up here on the screen. There is a small amount, 49,000, that is unearmarked in our budget at this point. It is part of Harold's contingency, but because it is coming from incremental development revenue, can only be used for development-related unforeseen requests. So we'll be tracking that separately from the rest of his contingency. And then back to Sandra to cover one-time expenses.
All right, so for one-time expenses, we are going to be adding quite a bit of one-time. I am going to go through this for the general fund, public safety, and then other funds. We have categorized the one-time into 4 different categories that you see on the screen. Capital equipment, this includes any equipment that meets the threshold of $5,000 or more. Then you have IT equipment or technology improvements. These are any budget requests that were related to basically IT. These include items such as laptops, software, hardware, that kind of thing. You also have non-capital small equipment and supplies. These are smaller items that don't meet that capital threshold. So they will include consumables as well, like supplies, also small printers, scanners, just to give you a couple of examples. And then we also have one-time services and expenses. And these are basically, if it doesn't fit in one of the other 3 categories, it falls here. It also includes professional and contracted services. So for the general fund, we had a total of 7.8 million one-time budget requests, 1 million of capital. Some of the larger items in this category in the general fund included like the public safety radios, 629,000 of that is for that. We also have a van for the new recreation, or an additional van for the day camp at the rec. The 625,000 in IT equipment or technology. This included items like financial software that was for 85,000, some Wi-Fi access points of 100,000, and your typical PC replacements that totaled 103,000. And then for the non-capital small equipment and supplies, some of the items there that make up that 388,000 include book carts, that was 5.5 million, LED light bulbs, those smaller types of equipment. And then the one-time services and expenses of 5.8 million. This included things like transfers to other funds, so transfers to the attainable housing, affordable housing, tech services fund, as well as 583,000 for one-time police officer positions that we mentioned last meeting. And there are some revenue offsets in the general fund. These total 1.4 million. And what makes up this revenue is 770,000 of property tax. This is one-time property tax. 379,000 that Teresa just mentioned for incremental development revenue. There are some union fees on here that are meant to be covering union-related expenses, as well as tree mitigation fees, which are also being used to offset tree mitigation types of expenses. And then the difference is coming from undesignated fund balance, that is 6.4 million. Your packet does have attachment J, which lists what makes up this full 7.8 million, and I just mentioned a few of those items just now. On the public safety side, one-time capital equipment, we had 282,000. That was also the public safety radio replacement. That was the public safety fund portion. The 4,035 for IT equipment. This is computer-related replacements. 95,235 in non-capital small equipment. This was things like ballistic vest replacements, one-time services and expenses. Some of these were, again, transfers to other funds. There was 100,000 of that going to the tech services fund that we're gonna be adding this year to the budget. And then we also have one-time funding for a CIP project, which is PBF 109, the municipal facilities parking lot rehab. We are adding a one-time 195,000 to that CIP project. Public safety fund detail can be found in attachment K of your packet, and same thing, you will see the detail that makes up the 762 of one-time public safety fund requests. And then lastly, we have all other funds. One time, these are everything but public safety and general fund. They do not include CIP costs, so these are strictly just these four categories. We have capital equipment at 753,000. An example of something that's included in this is a utility bucket truck. That's $300,000. IT equipment is at almost $1.5 million. This does include several of the Salesforce items in here, which make up that amount. And then small equipment of 137,000. These are related to positions that were funded and those other funds that we went through just a little bit ago. These are one-time costs such as desk, chair, things that the position will need. And then one-time services. This is a very large amount, and 13.6 of this is fleet replacements. I caught this just now. These really should have been included in that capital equipment category because they are vehicles and they are capital. But that's why that amount for one time is such a large amount. So 13.6 of that is fleet replacement. And then we have 1.1 million of transfers going into the tech services fund from various funds within the budget. So the total all other fund one-time requests totaled $18.6 million. And attachment L of your council packet includes the detail for these. And with that, I will pass it on to Jim, who's going to be talking about the transportation funding.
Is about the one-time funding?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilor Popkin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Peck. Just before Jim jumps in, I didn't see transportation funding in the packet anywhere. Did I miss that somewhere, or is this just a separate presentation? I'm asking out of ignorance on the process.
Sorry, Councilmember Popkin, I didn't quite catch all of your question. Could you repeat, please?
Yes, I didn't see the transportation funding in the packet. Was that attached, or is that a separate presentation? I don't have a strong preference. I just want to know if I'm referencing something.
In the packet, in the council communication, I think we called it the street fund.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we tend to use those names interchangeably.
Not a problem.
Legally, the fund is called the street fund.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification.
Good evening, Mayor Peck, City Council members. I am Jim Angstadt, Director of Engineering Services, and I will even confuse you even more by talking about the Street System Maintenance and Improvement Fund, also known as the Street Fund. In transportation funding in the city of Longmont, we draw our revenues from two main sources. The 3/4 cent sales tax, which is the main support for the street fund. And then we also have the Transportation Community Investment Fee Fund. That is a fee that is levied on new development, and there are some restrictions with those funding sources wherein we can only use those on arterial streets for capacity improvements. The street maintenance street fund, that fund pays for all the maintenance and improvements to the city's street system. And just for some trivia's sake, some quick statistics. There are 356 miles of roads in the city of Longmont. We serve our residents with 102 traffic signals, over 10,000 signs, 69 post-mounted radar signs, 16 flashing beacons, another 69 school flashing beacons, over 700 miles of striping, and over 600 miles of sidewalk. So in 2026, we are funding those improvements and maintenance with about $25 million in taxes, some intergovernmental revenue, which is primarily grant revenue. And then there's some licenses, permitting, and interests. And then we also have some fund balance that we are moving into 26 to help offset our expenses, so about $400,000. And you can see the kind of the breakdown of what those items are for. Capital is about 19, almost 20 million, and then operating and maintenance is about 9 million, and then there's personnel services. In TCIF, in 2026, most of TCIF will be utilized to support the CIP projects that are on arterial roadways, which while we are not widening any roadways, there are other capacity improvements for pedestrian movements and multimodal. So we're looking at around a little under $4 million in total funds, and then expenditures of short of $3 million. The CIP projects that we are planning on undertaking for next year. Here is a list. Quick look through. There will be additional information and more detail on our capital improvement program in next week's presentations. And we'll take a deeper dive into each of these projects. I do want to highlight a few items in operating. We are spending about $2.1 million for transit, for microtransit, for FlexBus, which is the bus that runs to Fort Collins, our Ride Free Longmont. We continue that program, as well as we do support VIA and their efforts. I've also noted here EcoPass, which is something that's been in our budget for a number of years. That is a pass through with RTD for city staff. We fund about 260 some staff members who are able to get an EcoPass, and then they can use almost any part of the RTD system, even outside of Longmont. I also wanted to highlight street maintenance. We've heard a lot of talk in the last year or so about quality of roads. I added a few of the budgets together that focus on street maintenance. And it isn't just about paving roads. It's also, when we talk about 15.6 million spent for street maintenance, that includes plowing of streets. That includes street cleaning. We clean our arterial and collector roadways at least once a month, sometimes more often in busier seasons. Street signs and marking for maintenance, concrete repair. not just concrete roadways, but the concrete, sidewalks, curb and gutter, curb ramps, traffic signals, the street rehab, and mostly there is a capital expense in there of our pavement management program. It is a little bit down from last year. Last year we spent a little over 17 million, in part because there has been, our sales and use tax is flat, and we've had less grant revenue to offset some of our other capital projects. So there's a little bit less going on. That is mostly in affecting the pavement management program. Almost all of the rest of those capital or operating budgets have shown an increase. We went through a practice this year and on almost all of our budgets in the street fund of reviewing past expenditures and where we had extra dollars we were cutting so that we could balance the budget. And on that note.
So
I would be happy to answer any questions before the LDDA come in and fascinate you with more budget stuff.
Oh, can't wait. So on your last slide, Jim, what was the difference between microtransit and ride-free Longmont?
So microtransit is the Ride Longmont, which is the new system.
Thank you.
Which and then Ride Free is the RTD buses where we buy up the fare box. And then there's also part of that funding is also with RTD is a flex program that they have as well. But microtransit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I when I saw Ride Free, I didn't recognize the free. I just read it as Ride Longmont, and that's why I asked the difference. Oh boy, thank you.
So one thing to note is microtransit is a newer program. It will be coming up on a year now. We were successful most recently in getting another grant from RTD, which adds another 1.4 million. I believe that will be coming up in October for the grant agreement.
Great.
Or the grant amendment to the original agreement. So we'll be seeing that and then putting it into the budget to offset those expenses.
Okay, I see Councillor Popkin has a question.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Peck. And thank you, Jim. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you. I know we've had a number of different constituent-related transportation and street-related requests since I was appointed. And so I just thank you for the detailed responses, the action on some of those. I really appreciate that. I had a question here. When we're looking about 2026 operating expenses here, I'm curious, do we have ridership, not projected ridership, I mean, maybe, but do we have previous year ridership data for each of these services so we have a sense of, like, not necessarily proportionality, but like kind of people who are using the services that we're paying for?
Well, I'm going to look to the new transportation planning manager in the back, and she put her thumbs up, so I'm going to assume yes.
Okay. Is that something that's easily available tonight, or is that? No.
The question the council wants to bring back, that is something we can bring back as part of a future budget presentation, so.
Okay, I mean, even an email update would be fine on that
Okay.
for now, but I mean, it is helpful to understand kind of the utility of that versus the dollars that are spent there. So I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, to that question, we did have a meeting with on microtransit, and we're still in that learning moment right now, where it's growing. We added another vehicle, and I do think at some point there is going to be a moment where we're really going to have to look at microtransit versus ride free and kind of what's really happening in that system based on the volume that we're seeing, and then asking the question of where does it make sense to put the dollars if we continue to see that kind of growth in Ride Longmont?
Yeah.
And I think that's also going to really require a conversation with RTD, because as we get more data from Ride Longmont, how are we evaluating the bus routes? Because it may be that there needs to be, within the city, how are those two working with each other? And I think that's just going to occur over time based on the data that we're seeing.
Yeah, I think that data would be helpful, and it also comes from a place that there's been a lot of discussion. I've gotten a lot of questions about, like, are we creating a service to cover for 8 Black, or can we have a bus to the Denver airport? And I guess it's all a question of priorities and funding at the end of the day. And so I would be curious to know how many people are utilizing those the services we're paying for here, and kind of how that could be structured into weigh other services that also serve our residents.
Yeah, we can look at it. I think it really is a question of available funds.
Yep.
And this is a tough year from a budget perspective.
Well, to be clear, I'm not inherently saying we add that in,
Yeah.
but it could be maybe we decide, oh, this is not serving as many people as we thought it might.
Right.
Is it worth changing that up? And I'm sure that's a broader policy conversation than just one transit route for one transit route. But
Yep. And speaking of, you brought up the services for 8 Black. I have been informed that there's another group that's actually moving into that space. It came out in the Housing Authority meeting today, where they're sending information out.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. And our, excuse me, our last topic for you this evening is the Longmont Downtown Development Authority budget. So the LDDA budget in the budget document covers the downtown parking fund, the Longmont GID, and then 5 individual DDA sub-funds. The parking and the GID are city funds. We have an IGA with the DDA to oversee and manage these funds on behalf of the city. So I'm just going to go through each one of these funds at a very high level. So starting with the downtown parking fund, the revenue in that fund is parking permits. The expense for 2026 is actually $14,499, less than the expense for 2025, and that is mainly due. 10,000 of that is due to our CIP project, DTR 023, which does not have any funding proposed for 25 or for 26, and the reason is because there is quite a bit of funding left over from prior years that was carried over into 25, will be carried over into 26, that can cover any of the needs for 26. So no need to fund anything new in that project. And then there's some minor operating decreases as well. And so this fund is really just used for parking lot upgrades, upkeep and upgrade. And then the GID fund, the main source of revenue comes from a property tax that is levied within the GID boundaries. And there is a slight increase, 16,000, almost 16,700 increase from last year from the 25 budget. And that increase is small increases in salary and benefits. Predominantly, though, it is an increase in the administrative transfer fee. Just a recalculation of time spent supporting this fund from the prior year. And this fund is really just used for beautification, maintenance of the GID area. And then getting into the actual DDA funds themselves, the DDA operating fund is the main operating fund that Kimberly and her staff use for all operations of the DDA. It's supported by a 5 mil property tax, as well as some transfers from other DDA funds for the administration. There's a transfer from the construction fund for administering the construction projects, and a transfer from the DIP fund, I believe. And the expenses are, again, an increase over the 25 expenses, again, in personal services, and then some general operating expenses.
And then the building permit fund, also known as the DIP fund, this is funded by actual permits within the DDA boundaries that the city collects. Those are really transferred into the DDA, and it funds improvements within the downtown area. So a flat budget for 26 from what the 25 budget is. And then the DDA debt service fund, so this is where the tax increment financing dollars go. 1.5 million of that is what we're projecting that fund will collect in TIF revenue in 26. And the expenses right at 1.5 million as well. That is a decrease from last year. And the decrease really is because of a decrease in the construction fund, which I'll show you in just a moment. But the expense is it's a debt that is established. We have to establish a debt in order to utilize TIF funding, and so we use it is a annual debt that is a loan from the fleet fund, and so that's how we establish that debt is through the fleet fund. So the TIF revenues are really used for two purposes: the art and entertainment fund, as you see up here. So the bulk of the revenue into the art and entertainment fund is TIF dollars that is coming from the DEP fund. There's also some other charges for services that help support this fund as well. The expenses are an increase from 2025, mainly in supplies and professional and contract services. And this fund is used for programming, marketing, events, and some small business support. And then the second fund that is supported by the TIF revenues is the construction fund. Here's the decrease, $524,000 decrease from 2025. It really is a reduction in the number of projects and priorities that are funded according to the master plan of development. And I have a slide here, other projects. These are the projects that are being funded by the TIF dollars that I was just referring to. They're about $520-some thousand less than what was funded in 26 or in 2025. And the main reason for the reduction in funding is, and Kimberly can speak to this a little bit more, there's some carryover of funds that have accumulated over the past few years that needs to be spent down, and will continue to carry over into 2026 until those funds are spent. So less money is really, less new money is needed for these projects. I think, what was the other reason you were saying the reduction was, Kimberly? Sorry.
Okay. Mayor Peck, members of council, Kimberly McKee, Executive Director of the Downtown Development Authority. In our construction fund, we generally project out projects and things that we're going to work on, and oftentimes those are 2, 3, or 4-year projects. So we'll fund them up front and then continue to implement them. So we're in the middle of implementing a bunch of those. A few of them have been kind of repurposed. If we had extra money left, then we can kind of put it towards things that we are going to do in the future. So, and we intentionally really tried to keep that number down a little bit so we have more money that we're building up for larger projects when they happen. Should I just keep going? Okay, just to kind of go over a few of the things in our construction fund. So the main thing is 600 Main Street, and as you all know, we bought that vacant gas station across the street from the pump house. We are starting right now on the phase 1 implementation, which is kind of turning it into a town square where there'll be gatherings and events and a pop-up visitor center. Phase 2 of that is going to be hopefully to put a linear building fronting Main Street, keeping the town square in the back, but having a building. When we did some of our community outreach, the community really wanted a buffer to the Main Street traffic if they were going to enjoy some time downtown. And so that will become our offices, the visitor center, and hopefully our other economic development partners will join us in that building. And it can be a kind of a one-stop shop for our businesses, 2 doors down from the chamber and very close to the Development Services Center. So $800,000 of that is to get us started on what that is going to look like, as well as we are pursuing some different capital grants and some other things with partners to make that happen. $20,000 to round out the wayfinding implementation that we've been doing in the downtown area as part of the city's master wayfinding plan. Some of our other projects, we do have some data services that we subscribe to, some metrics. We are working with a digital dashboard that's going to really help us with some of our metrics, but it's going to be a one-time expense where we're going to do some training for staff, so then staff learns and can do that in the future. As we prepare for Sundance in 2027, we really want to make sure that our creative district looks fantastic. So some of this funding in our placemaking and arts district is to implement some large mural projects and some other large placemaking projects. We're starting that right now. You may want to come see our disco dumpsters at Art Walk, which are going to be fantastic. Our Clean and Safe programs, our economic vitality programs, which is implementing our retail assessment and gap analysis that we contracted last year, and then adding some of cameras in 600 Main that work with the city's camera system. And then our Spokane Kaufman garage and O&M lease, we are going to take over more spaces in the Spoke garage that we're able to allow the community to park in. And then our infrastructure renewal that we get each year as part of our TIF deal. So those are some of our major highlights, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Christ.
Thank you, Mayor. Kimberly, is the wayfinding just going to be down in the downtown area, or have we found a way to get wayfinding throughout the city?
So our funding will have to stay in the DDA based on our statute and that type of thing. We still certainly hope that that gets implemented citywide. It is a citywide plan. I think as certain park signs and those type of things get fixed, they're going with the new system, so.
Okay, so we'll just have to keep chipping away at it, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for putting that whole program together so that we can chip away at it.
Councilor Popkin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Peck. Just a quick question here. You mentioned the LDDA permit fees or permit revenue. Is that just the city's permit revenue for properties within the LDDA area, or is there a secondary or supplemental permit fee for businesses within?
It is the city's permits within the DDA area.
And okay, so it's
The
building permits, yeah. So that's not like a secondary revenue stream
not
there.
a
It's
secondary
just
revenue.
one. It's the standard permit fee. It's just in the LDDA area, so that's where the revenue.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I would also add that, and Councilmember Popkin, you brought up the retaining wall and parking deck project a little earlier this evening. The DDA is contributing $1 million of essentially TIF revenue to that project. Kimberly did rearrange and reprioritize some funding in that other project category in her current budget. 400,000 of that, and then we appropriated earlier, a couple months ago, the additional 600,000 for the full $1 million.
That's actually not uncommon when there's a project where there's mutual interest, where we're both kind of working together to fill the capital gap that we have. It would have been, I don't know that we could have done it without the DDA supporting the funding for that. And I think they couldn't have done it without us being in it, so that's not uncommon in this world.
Yeah. Counselor, Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo Ferring.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I just have a question about the spoke garage. So you said you're bringing in more spaces. Did you find that I love parking there, by the way. We use it all the time. Are you finding that those spaces that we have allotted are they filling up pretty fast?
They're filling up more than they have been, which was our goal. We worked with the county to be able to use some of their spaces during the Kaufman Street construction. And we were able to sell permits for $10. So that's a month. And that's probably not super sustainable. But looking at, there was a private partner in the garage that is looking to get out. And so we are going to take over their spaces in the O&M, which gives us more money because we sold 80 permits. Now, there was never 80 people there at the same time. And we know that in our parking system, but there was a lot of interest. And so as we continue to get interest, we want to still make sure that there's places that people can make all-day parking decisions without
because I think you were working with me on with the resident who.
Yes.
Do you remember? Okay.
I do.
Yeah. And so would something like this help in that particular situation?
Well, it will help in the fact that if we get those spaces, our goal is to get, I say loosely, control of all of the spaces, which allows us to enforce all of the spaces. And instead of saying, these 3 spaces you have to be a resident, and these 3 spaces you have to be a business owner,
got it.
Then it can say, you can park in this garage. And then we can enforce it. Well, sorry. We can enforce it, and it can all be very seamless as opposed to, your best guess of how something's going to work. When it doesn't work, you kind of try to fix it. And I think this will make it easier for the public to understand, the residents to understand.
Sure. Okay, so it was like a different kind of set of problems with that. And so, in the area of parking, I think about, so what that resident had talked about, it was very compelling. You're out there, you go to the restaurant, maybe you get your hair cut, you're there for more than 2 hours, and then you get cited. But they're utilizing the businesses. And so, I hate to see that, somebody get punished for spending time there.
The other
we want that.
thing that our board would like to do is with our integrated parking system that we just did with the city, is put up signage in all of our public lots with a QR code where you can really easily, any public lot, buy a 5-day permit and stay all day. So if you would like to make that decision at the beginning and say, hey, I don't want to worry about this 2 hours, I'm going to stay here longer, you can buy that permit. You don't have to come to our office anymore. You can stand right there and do it. And so and just to be clear, we're not charging for parking unless you want to stay over 2 hours. So that's what those signs will do.
No, and that seems fair. Okay. Well, thank you.
Is that it for LDDA?
That is it for LDDA. So
Thank you
I did
very
just
much.
want to highlight our study session for next week will mainly be CIP, and then some utility budget summaries, and then our new information technology fund that we've been referring to. And with that, if council has any other comments, questions, or need any additional information as part of this whole process, we'll be asking this question after every presentation. So feel free to, mull it over and let us know.
Thank you very much. So we're at the final call, public invited to be heard. I see one person, 2 people. Seeing no one, I'm going to close final call, public invited to be heard, and go for mayor and council comments. Do any of you have comments? I do want to say that some of us were at the museum soiree last Friday. and it was great. It was very fun watching Eric Mason be all excited about his new sections, new wing of the library, and it was well attended. And
The museum,
with, did I say library again?
I think you did.
Museum. City manager remarks.
No comments, Mayor and Council.
City attorney.
Mayor and Council, I did look at Robert's rules. The second on a motion to reconsider can be anybody. The maker of the motion has to be in the prevailing party. So the good news is we don't have to go back to the sit-lie ordinance and fix that
It is
anymore.
done.
It's done.
Thank you so much. Okay, it's been moved by Councilor McCoy that we adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Christ. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and good night.